or trade. I mean, Dubai and India have always shared strong business ties, but it's at this moment that we are seeing another level of expansion happening, and it's evolving where Indian companies are increasingly looking at Dubai not just as a gateway to the Gulf, but also to Africa, Europe, and the wider global markets. But before I come to that, I'd like to start by asking you, what are the business conversations happening in Dubai right now? Is it about optimism, resilience, uncertainty? If you could tell us, because you're so closely connected with the business community.
First of all, we'd like to thank you on this opportunity. And uh, India is a very important market for us. It is our second largest trading partner, and UAE is the third largest trading partner for India. Currently, the most discussed point among the business community or majority of business communities is the disruption that AI is creating globally and how can they take advantage of AI. What made this even more important is that His Highness Crown Prince of Dubai Sheikh Hamdan asked Dubai Chamber to take the responsibility of transforming the private sector to be powered by agentic AI. Why? To improve the productivity, profitability, quality of services that will eventually end up having a better social welfare and lifestyle for the people living in Dubai. Currently, AI is not looked at as a luxury. They would like to utilize AI even in traditional sectors such as manufacturing and retail. And how can they build bridges? Where shall they start? So the most question that I get asked, I want to do agentic AI. How can I start? To be able to do that, we created vertical of different projects under Dubai Chambers to help our businesses depending on the readiness. How can they tap into AI, either through capability building or through market access and network? That's why we came to Bangalore the last 2 days, and it is the first city that we visited after we started this new AI project. And the idea is to create an AI corridor between Dubai and Bangalore, and it will continue to other tech hubs in India. So we can have Dubai as a place for Indian innovation and Indian technology to be implemented, and then use Dubai to grow and spread the Indian technology, especially in AI, in the wider region, which will eventually help us locally in having more transformation in AI and digitalization.
Great. So, were there any very specific outcomes from your Bangalore visit?
We signed two important MOUs. The first MOU was with NASCOM. The MOU will focus on AI and agentic AI specifically. How can we help AI companies coming from Bangalore to enter Dubai market and then use Dubai as a growth hub for them in the wider region, Africa, Middle East, CIS countries, and further. And second thing is, how can we create a bridge between Indian AI talent with the markets that are around us? We always hear in different parts of the world that different cities and countries would like to establish AI projects. But I think the running fuel of any AI project, especially with the large magnitude, is the AI talent. And the AI talent is available in India. But this talent requires to be connected in the right way, incubated, and giving the opportunity to this talent not only to be a part of multinational companies, giving them a further opportunities to go into entrepreneurship, to apply their innovation, and then to connect them with the right markets or the right investors that will help them to take their journey to the next level.
Great. On another note, I'd like you to give us a glimpse of how it was interacting with the industry during the peak of the crisis a few months ago. I remember you having back to back meetings with different sectors and acting as a bridge between the government and businesses. So, did that help build confidence?
Thank you for raising this question. In Dubai, there is a very close relationship between the private sector and the public sector. Us as a Chamber of Commerce, being the voice of the private sector, we were always keen to work with government officials, not only in challenging times, even during regular times. During challenging times, most of the solutions that come from the private sector are innovative, are fast, and efficient. So we always meet with the subject matter experts and we try to take the solution that they came up with or the workaround, and then we expand it across the sector. So during the first 2 weeks, when things got a bit tough that time, we met more than 100 business group and business council. So we met people representing more than 70 sectors and business councils representing more than 50 countries, not only to help them in the current situation, how can we even help their families, how can we help their growth plans, and how can we ensure that they don't need to change their budgets. So we don't even think of the day-to-day. We want you to continue your success. So what was the result and outcome of this? We came out with excellent solutions that was not only limited to the situation, that helped us in growing new sectors and finding solutions. And one of the positive numbers that myself, I was happily surprised about, in the first 6 months of this year, we had 7,500 new Indian companies joining us as Dubai Chamber of Commerce, which bumped up the number of Indian companies to 85,000 companies. This is a very significant number. And the second thing is the amount of efficiency that companies went through and the amount of digitalization to become more efficient so they can continue providing their services and their sales without having any implication on the supply chain in terms of cost. So this resilience comes from engaging with the private sector, from giving them the space to bring up their innovation. So the key success, or one of the key success of Dubai, in addition to having a great leadership, is it's a city that listens to the businessmen across the year. So around the clock, if times is challenging, they will listen even more. They will meet you more. If times is positive, they will come to you for growth opportunity. So engagement with the private sector is not limited only when there is a challenge. While when things are growing, we always believe that we should sit with the private sector, and now you're growing by double digit, 10% a year. How can we make this 10, 15? What do you need from us? And I think this gives people the long-term trust. That's why we see a lot of continuous investment coming from India to Dubai, and the number of companies and Indian companies continue to grow in the city.
So you mean to say that after the geopolitical event earlier this year, the confidence has gone up for Indian companies, the way they look at Dubai, right?
One number that might not be very visible is more than 120,000 new residents move into the city. There is an increase of number of family offices setting their investment arms in the city of Dubai. So at the end of the day, numbers are the real proof of growth. And I think what really matters further than the day-to-day numbers is it's a place that gives entrepreneurs, especially in the tech sector, uh, the opportunity to apply their innovation. We have sandboxes around the city. We have a lot of startups coming as far as America and Canada down to Australia. They have great concepts. Just due to regulation, they cannot apply it. While in Dubai, you have controlled regulation labs where you can apply your innovation. Another innovative approach that was done about 2 to 3 years ago, when we continued to hear that governments are trying to ban or strict the use of virtual assets, Dubai went away and created the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. So an authority that majority of the law that they come up with are the first of its kind in the world. So we don't have to wait until things settle down, but we have to work with the private sector to build the right policies. Last 3 years, Dubai Chamber reviewed with the private sector and then communicated the recommendation with the government more than 200 policy reforms. And the government accepted and adopted 60% of the recommendation, which shows that they really listen to what the private sector is bringing forward.
And while you mentioned AI, what are the other key sectors in focus or where the opportunities you see would arise?
Sure. First of all, I think India is having an excellent project called Make in India. I think this is a great opportunity to make your product in India and grow your business and product through Dubai. So Dubai can be the growth launchpad for the Make in India project. At the end of the day, you need to connect to the wider world. In 2024, end of the year, the exports of the whole MENA region, 41% of it came out of UAE. We are always one of the top 3 trading partners across Africa. So you can imagine, agnostically, regardless which sector, either you're manufacturing heavy industry or you're manufacturing advanced technology, if you make it here, we can be your launch pad to grow it. Now moving into what sectors specifically. I think the next wave of growth for Indian companies in Dubai and in our region definitely will be in digital economy, mostly will be in AI, in deep tech, in fintech. And I think these sectors will definitely have a huge opportunity for bilateral growth between Dubai and India.
And as more Indian companies are using Dubai as a base to expand beyond the Gulf, how is Dubai helping them access these markets, say across Africa, Europe?
Dubai chambers have 39 global offices. We help any company that have a base in Dubai, regardless their origin, even if it's a company that's set up last year. We help them to access more than 80 markets because each office that we have cover a radius of countries. The support can be as simple as setting up a subsidiary, and it can be as big as investment and acquisition projects. This is very important because this is an easy gateway. We have an office that is based in Mumbai, and we have another office that we opened last year in Bangalore. So you can always reach out to our offices for further clarification. This is from Dubai Chamber. From the city of Dubai, we have been blessed that we have 2 very strong world-class logistic players such as Emirates Airline and DP World. Emirates Airline, they fly to more than 250 destinations, while DP World, they manage more than 92 ports globally. So this creates a very strong logistical network that can definitely enable Indian entrepreneurs and large corporations to access any country in the world efficiently quickly and in a sustainable way.
Great. And Dubai has benefited from being a trusted global business hub. But in a world where companies are constantly reassessing risk and moving capital, what will it take for Dubai to remain competitive over the next decade?
I don't want to repeat my answer, but to be honest, I think if all other cities do the same, they will have maybe similar results or even better than us. Just engage with the private sector. Be open for criticism. Be open to receive recommendation. Be open to accept that this policy is outdated, this law is outdated, need to be changed. So the only thing that we do is that we listen to the experts in a very humble approach. We know that they know the sector better than us, and we try to have a win-win situation between having the right competitive market with giving them the growth opportunity. At the end of the day, you cannot, be in a position that you want to force a new AI law or a new manufacturing law, and you never manufactured one single item as a government official or as an official in the private sector. But if you engage with 100 manufacturers and then you try to get a common ground, definitely you will get better reforms. And I think this is the key aspect of the continuous development. And the second thing is that you need to have an open platform for entrepreneurship. You should not worry about applying new things, being the first in applying new things, taking some heat, taking some criticism, not only globally, even from your own people, just to be able to try out things. The worst thing that can happen if it did not work, you can stop it. But the best thing that it can happen that you might be the first, leader in this new area, and then it will take others a lot of time to catch up with you.
And finally, for the Indian CEOs in the room who are thinking of moving or expanding to Dubai, what would you like to say to them? And what is the mistake do you think they should avoid?
Speak to other Indian CEOs in Dubai. I'm not saying this as a marketing, really. They will tell you, what is the best way not only to enter the market, what is the best and quickest way to, accelerate your growth in the market and through Dubai. You can always reach out to Dubai Chambers. We have 2 offices here. Abhijit is sitting there, and we'll be happy to support. At the end of the day, I think the historical trade relationship between India and Dubai specifically goes back hundreds of years. Last year, we reached as a UAE $100 billion in terms of bilateral trade, and Honorable Prime Minister Modi and His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed put a new target by 2032 to bump it up to 200 billion US dollar. To be able to do that, we really need to relook at things. We need to do things efficiently. We need to work closer. We need to communicate more. And I think this is an open invitation for all CEOs who are keen to just come and visit on a private visit and engage with the private sector and engage with the chamber. We'll be happy to support you on the ground.
Thank you so much for all the insights. It was great speaking with you today, and I'm sure Dubai will, with Dubai Chambers and you there, I'm sure that Indian businesses there don't have to worry about anything.
And I'd like to take this opportunity, and this is honestly from my heart, to thank the business community coming from India. Lots of them, they're 3rd and 4th generation. They always come with their innovation and their will belief, and I think they respect a round of applause and a thank. And we wish to see more Indian businesses growing, not only in Dubai, even from Dubai to the world. Thank you.
For a growing number of Indian businesses, Dubai is both a destination and a route to the wider world. Your Excellency, thank you for joining us. Dila Shah, thank you for leading the conversation.
All right, the stage is being set for what's coming up next. Moving forward, Suresh, there are three words that can turn any perfectly rational person into a financial detective.
Yes, those three words are payment is processing.
Exactly. Now, you don't know whether you bought the item or you bought the item twice or you simply transferred the money into a digital unknown.
So obviously what you do is you go and check your bank statement in your bank app, and obviously the money has been debited from you already.
And the merchant app?
Says money is not received.
Absolutely. And suddenly, a 10-second transaction has three parties, two screenshots, and a case number.
And sometimes some fisticuffs as well. Now, this is followed usually by your money will be returned in 3 to 5 working days. Your money will be returned in 3 to 5 working days.
But that's a sentence that has never made time move faster, I must say.
Right, that brings us to our next conversation. It turns something that most of us we now use every day without thinking very much, without we use it without thinking about what sits underneath it. In India, in India, instant payments have become so ordinary that waiting even a few seconds can feel unusually long.
And now AI is entering the system too, from fraud detection and risk to customer experience and cross border payments, which makes the next phase of money more about not just speed, but also about how much intelligence we build into the system, and very importantly, how much trust we preserve as we do it.
So, our next panel is titled AI, Trust, and the Future of Money. Joining us are the Managing Director and Head of Payments at Asia Pacific at JP Morgan, Madhav Kalyan, Group Country Manager, India and South Asia at Visa, Suresh Sethi, Chief Executive Officer, India and South Asia at Standard Chartered Bank, PD Singh, and Managing Director, APAC at Coinbase, John O'Loughlin.
And moderating the discussion is India head at Boston Consulting Group, Rahul Jain. Ladies and gentlemen, a bigger round of applause for the panelists and the moderator. Over to you, Mr. Jain.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just after lunch is not the easiest time to do a session, but given we are discussing money, AI, and risk, hopefully people will find it worth their time. So, without much ado, I'll get started. The plan is to cover in 3 or 4 different blocks. The first block is where are payments headed, in what direction. Second is stable coins and agentic AI, how do they change things. Thirdly, what happens to the banks as an impact of this? And fourthly, therefore, what kind of international opportunities throw up? We'll see how much we can cover. We'll keep moving fast. So we'll start with where are payments headed? And maybe, Suresh, if I can start with yourself. India has built a payment ecosystem around UPI, which is really world class, right? Everybody around the world notices it. It's fast, it's ubiquitous. The question is, what's the next journey for it? Is it faster, invisible, or fundamentally different ways of moving money?
Thanks, Rohit. Uh, Absolutely. I think India is at the forefront and cutting edge of developing a world-class payment ecosystem. I think one interesting aspect from a consumer payment perspective is that we are heading to an area where we are moving from digital commerce to delegated commerce. So I think the payment journeys will accordingly change. Today, how are people actually discovering and purchasing stuff is going to be a very critical determinant as to how the payments evolve. Because right from a time when we would actually use technology to assist in discovery and purchase, we are talking about a time when the entire experience can be delegated. You have agents today going out doing the purchase for you. They are looking at variants. They are creating the cards and they're doing the checkouts. And they're going to an extent of even enabling payments to happen. So that changes the entire ecosystem completely. So what we are seeing clearly happening in the area of payments is that, first of all, our entire internet was built for human interface. So how do we, first of all, look at making the commerce itself agent ready? And that becomes the first part where when an agent is actually transacting, how is it different from a human to interact? And I think some of the work we are doing at Visa is clearly to see how do you make the agent, the commerce sites ready for agent discovery. And we today even have uh, tools like creating agent scores for a site to tell, is this site discoverable by the agent? Can they do their transactions smoothly? Can they actually transact seamlessly and complete the journey? The second part, which is very important, is trust. Till now, it was about the customer authentication and the credentials, the payment credentials we use. Now we are looking at a scenario where the trust has to be actually built into intent, whatever intent you are giving to the agent to consume, purchase, and then pay on your behalf. So, how do you define a trusted payment credential and how do you tokenize the same? Now, if I'm going on a journey and actually purchasing something, I need to be sure that the site where the purchase is happening is able to understand that this was the intent, and therefore, is it a bot or is it a actual agent which is behaving in the right manner? So tokenization becomes very critical. And last but not least is actually going to be controls. So the human control, the human intent of whatever you are giving as the program decision and the permission has to stay corrected. So I think payments are evolving for us in that manner.
Yeah.
And clearly the scalability will come around trust being at the bedrock rather than just looking at how do you make the journey faster.
Yeah.
And that will be the changing stance over here.
No, super. Thank you very much. PD, if I could ask your perspective, what is the next best shift for payments? And where does AI in particular fit into that?
So, firstly, thank you for having us here. And I must say something controversial after lunch, otherwise, we're all going to go to sleep. But jokes apart, you're absolutely right. I think it is AI which is going to drive the next phase of what we see in payments and the relevance of payments. We've heard some very exciting and interesting insights into how the human in the loop is always there, but are we dealing with a bot or are we dealing with a machine on the other end? what we've what I think we really want as a consumer is the fact that the payment certainty is overriding almost everything else. Yes, we want speed, we want a personalized experience, we do want the payment to happen, we want it to be done at the cheapest possible cost and all of that. But the fact that your money needs to reach the right place safely, I think is the first constituent, which is where AI comes in. So AI helps us with customizing the experience. AI helps us with making sure that all the bad actors are weeded out of the system. By the way, they're using AI as well, and all the bad actors know exactly where the weak spots are. So somewhere, I do think, and regulators have also spoken about this, as the value and criticality of these payments increase with the help and use of machine learning and AI, we will have to bring in some amount of thought. You may call it friction, you may call it the ability to filter out the right and the wrong to make sure that the ultimate outcome is what we desire. So AI is extremely important, going to bring in customers, enhancement in experience, is going to bring in certainty of the payment, and is going to bring in definitely the safety that we all desire on the payment front.
Super. Thank you. And Madhav, if I can go to you next, we have lots of mechanisms, whether it is bank deposits or cards or UPIs or tokenized deposits or stable coins and so many rails to move the money, right? Are we moving towards a world where the consumer doesn't care what the rail is as long as the money moves? And then what happens to the institutions that build these rails?
Yeah. So clearly, at a customer level, they don't really care about the rail or the tool that's being used. All they care about are outcomes. They care about, is it delivered speedily? Is it delivered in a reliable manner? Is it delivered in a cost efficient way? Uh, is it creating certainty? Is it taking care of trust? But it doesn't take away, it's a completely different story when you look at the institutional layer. Each rail has different ways of how it deals with legal claim, how it deals with risk, where data is held, finality of the transactions, and the economics. And so for the institutions, how the rail behaves and how you choose a rail is very different from how a consumer will look at it. And so there is that dichotomy that needs to get married. So the real risk for the rail owners is that the rails don't really vanish. it's the rail part that becomes invisible and automated. Uh, if it's a wallet or a platform or it's an agent that's choosing the path, the institution that builds the rail needs to continue to retain salience with the customer that they are serving or the principal which is behind an agent that's mandated the agent to be able to actually work with them. And so really it's about institutions moving up the value chain and closer to the customer to be able to not let the rail become a commodity, but for actually adding value in finding the most optimal rail in which optimizes for cost, optimizes for speed. Not everything needs to move instantly. There are payments that can move slowly at a much lower cost um, uh, point and with a different kind of finality, and also bring in that nuance in terms of cross border. So that's really how institutions, even as uh, the different rails become agnostic, will have to move and calibrate the conversation by being closer to the client.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting perspective. We'll move to the next chapter, which is stable coins and agentic commerce. And maybe, John, if I can start with yourself. India has not yet opened its door for stable coins in a full-fledged way. And if you could share your perspective on what could stable coins bring beyond what existing mechanisms of payments are, especially in context of agentic commerce, or any other advantage that you think it brings.
Yeah, thank you, Rahul. And again, a plus one to all the comments that the previous speakers have made. We are in a beneficial position and honored to talk to lots of clients and consumers who are doing this. It may not be entirely obvious for people on the street every day, but you need to be very reassured that things in this space of digital assets and tokenization and stablecoins are being adopted very quickly, and the train has very much left the station. All of these large, traditional finance institutions have spent hundreds of billions of dollars, or billions of dollars rather, in this space, and the volumes are in the trillions of dollars. So it takes some time for that to actually sink in. Perhaps I should have said first, again, we're delighted to be part of this conversation. We've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in India and have hundreds of employees here. And I think the advantage for India is the talent advantage you have here. The talent in India is just absolutely phenomenal. And I've spent decades building businesses in China and other markets. And I think in this ascendant AI moment, this is really where the opportunity is for the interplay of digital assets, tokenization, and stablecoins. Just to be clear, stablecoins don't compete with UPI. UPI is a world-class platform that is lauded by other geographies, by the world's best fintech players. And stablecoins are really complementary to UPI. They're the digital layer, the native kind of on-chain money that will allow all of this AI to come to life. And some of the speakers were talking about agentic commerce. I was with some wonderful university students last night, and they're all trading, whether it's paper trading competitions with their college classmates or at their technical institutions or management schools. And they're very adept at watching patterns of trade, and they're all setting up their bots to be trading through the evenings and making micro payments. There's not really a risk of anything going terribly wrong because they've programmed their money. They're using a bot, they're using Claude to really control what they want to do. And so at Coinbase, our mission is economic freedom. We think people should be able to use these tools in AI to get the best outcomes for their own financial investing and their prosperity journey. This shouldn't be just controlled by the hedge funds or the biggest proprietary trading desks in the world. And so those are some of examples of what stable coins are enabling today already in India. This is very much happening right now, Rahul.
Super. I think moving to AI, and Suresh, if I can ask you, one thing that is likely to happen is the frauds and their sophistication levels with payments will increase. But so will also the ability of the networks to detect them. So are we moving towards a world where the ability to distinguish a genuine transaction from a non-genuine one becomes really the core source of advantage?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting area because what we are finding is AI works both ways, as PD was just now saying. So it gives the bad actors equal amount of scale and sophistication. Today, in order to create a phishing, message or do something which you can create a picture or something, it becomes very easy for them. So I think there are two or three shifts which will have to happen. One is clearly we will move to start detecting fraud and move it upstream. So it is not about once the transaction has happened and then you are trying to assess is it valid or not. You have to actually go a step beyond and see is it the right intent. Today in a push payment transaction, it's very easy that somebody can defraud you, and once you've authenticated the transaction in the right manner, you realize the intent was not there. So I think you have to actually go at the level of intent and understand behavioral and analytics to see how it works. Second thing we clearly see with AI coming in, static rules do not work. Static rules can only look backwards for you. It is going to be risk based intelligence which comes into play, where you are able to see behavioral analytics. At a consumer level, you have to exactly map the consumer. So you're looking at velocity, you're looking at behavior, time of transaction, value of transaction. All these signals have to be seen on a real time basis, and that becomes critical. And last but not least, something we all are challenged with when we look at a mule account behavior, you have to take an ecosystem approach. You can no longer be looking in a fragmented manner. You have to look all across. So we've seen today that there are various initiatives coming into play. On one side, we are talking about introducing friction so that there is more time to be able to detect and make sure that the intent is right. What I would call out in a world of AI, it is important to have dynamic friction. So any transaction where the intent is clearly mapped, it flows through seamlessly. Wherever you have a challenge, you slow the transaction, you take your time and make out whether it is true or not. So I think it's a very fast moving world, and we are moving from static to dynamic rules.
Fantastic. And PD, if you can talk about any big change that AI will bring inside a bank's operations.
Yeah, the way I think of AI is like the Russian dolls. You peel away one layer at a time, and AI is getting closer to the core, very core of banking. Let's start at the basics. Like a bank like mine, for example, has trained in the last 12 months 55,000 people with 225,000 hours of AI training. With that kind of exposure to AI, what we've noticed is implementation of technology, and this is an example I'm giving. Implementation takes a very long time. 30% improvement in implementation of technology. So AI is not just an efficiency tool to reduce mundane tasks or to do things like that, but is actually helping in direct implementation of what we really want to do from a technology front. I think banks, as we know them today, may not be in the same form in the next 3 to 5 years. What that form and shape is going to be decided by the speed of adoption and by our ability to take some of these to the other level. If you see what the RBI governor said a few days ago on this Monday, and then the deputy governor said thereafter, I think the regulator is moving at an equal speed, learning as quickly as the industry is. That's what we saw, if I can dial back on UPI, where the certainty of regulation actually enabled us to reach where we are to, what is it, about 240 or 250 trillion transactions in a financial year.
Yeah, fantastic. And John, if I can ask you now, what we are seeing is AI agents are the buyers, and they could soon negotiate and traverse and buy and make transactions. And when the agents start to buy, right, and humans are not involved, how do we establish trust? How do we establish relationships with, and how do you distinguish between agents and humans?
Yeah, certainly, a great question, Rahul. I think when machines are talking to machines, there have to be guardrails in place. We index towards being referred to as the trusted exchange. and that means being regulated by MiCA, the regulatory guardrails in Europe, or that really cover, over 20 economies, quite forward-looking regulation, but with a lot of compliance. And then in Australia, whether it's the Australian Securities Investment Commission or the custodian who oversees New York State or the SEC, when you've been vetted by BlackRock to launch an ETF, that's 3 or 4 years of due diligence. So we take that same responsibility and concern for customer safety, governance, and compliance into whatever we're doing in the AI space. At Coinbase, any code that is touching the customer has to have a human confirmation before that code is finalized. But actually, the space that has benefited the most from AI internally in our business has really been around compliance, risk payments, and lots of things around security. I think we're aware that a lot of the banks and digital exchanges have had to raise their security bar now with the infancy of AI. It's really forced a new bar to jump over for cybersecurity and controls internally. So there is still a human element, but again, having some guidance and guardrails is something that we request in whatever geography we're operating in.
Super. And Madhav, this is to you, and this has always intrigued me. If in past banks held money, information, and trust all together, and as all of this shift is happening, do they run a risk of becoming just an infrastructure provider, and all the other services get disintermediated? And if not, then what parts of the value chain they must retain to have a true future value-added identity?
Yeah, so even as the life of a payment becomes more and more agentic, banks will need to continue to perform 4 or 5 things that they currently do through the life of a payment. The first is when you receive a payment, you verify identity. You check whether the person sending the payment is actually who he purports to be. The next thing you do is you typically check uh, whether they have the execution authority or the mandate to execute what they're executing. Then you ensure settlement certainty because there are counterparties, there are clearing exchanges, you're dealing with things across borders, and that's something that you bring to the table. And when you move money or you move a payment, you're not just moving value, you're also moving data. And that data is very critical for the client in being able to reconcile, to be able to tell people that they've actually made a payment. It could be dealers, suppliers, it could be clients saying you've finished your purchase on an e-commerce platform, etc. That's another piece that banks do as a part of what they do, and then ensure that this whole chain is auditable and verifiable. Now, when you break the payment down into each of these together is what we nebulously call trust. And there is a role to play in each of these in the agentic world. An agent is acting on behalf of a principal. There is a principal that is there. Now, each of these 4 or 5 areas that I talked about are stitched together loosely and can be done at different times. In an agentic world and in a world that's working on decentralized ledgers, all of this has to be done instantly. They all roll into one. Controls can't be a post facto bolt on. You have to do it as a part of the transaction. And if you're able to do this, then you're no longer a mover of money and infrastructure, but you're a trusted value provider in the payments ecosystem. And that's really what institutions have to do.
Super. Thank you. Moving on to slightly the international nature of things, and PD, if I can ask you, Standard Chartered has been one of the biggest custodian of international trade and payments, and as we see a lot of cross-border money payment happen, what role do banks evolve into in this nature?
I think you must have read about the recent SWIFT payment that came in 37 seconds, whereas people wait days, sometimes more than that, for cross-border payments to come into the country. So I think, firstly, the speed of which the payments are coming in at, what like Madhav mentioned, with the trust and ability to meet all regulations has gone to the next level for sure. The infrastructure provider, Swift, has also made sure that all the data fields, like again Madhav has said, required for regulatory compliance is also available in a seamless manner and again automated to the extent possible. When we have international payments, there are many aspects to it, very different from domestic payments. There is a foreign exchange angle, there is a risk angle, which is related to liquidity on either side. There is an ability to put it into the local rails where the money lands. So it's not just getting it into the country, whichever country that is, but also making sure reaches the right through the right rails at the most efficient cost as well, which was also mentioned earlier. So I think international payments are now at the cusp of reaching that level of efficiency where we will see not only speed, cost, ability to the transparency, all of that will make sure that I think we will see a very different world in international payments. And again, this is extremely important in the phase that we are today with new vendors, new suppliers, new supply chains. Clients are struggling with onboarding new supply chains, new vendors from all across the world with what is happening. So, bringing in all of that, I think a bank's role has never been more critical than it is today.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Madhav, if I can come to you, UPI is making a big push on the real-time forex. Do you think it could make it a part of the global payment architecture?
So what UPI has done very successfully over the many years in India is it's removed friction in local payments. And it's done it with three things. Speed, so with almost no cost, and with settlement finality, where it comes back and tells you that the payment has been executed and the counterparty has received it. These three building blocks have really what have contributed to how UPIs got built. Now, if you try to do that in the cross-border space, the most important foundational block that needs to get added to these three is you're dealing with multiple currencies and you're dealing with time zones, which means you need to be able to give a 24 by 7 cross border settlement mechanism, which then works with these three pieces that are the value propositions that UPI brings, which is where the partnership that we've done with them is to be able to give over 120 currencies in multiple markets and the ability to settle instantly with clearing houses in multiple markets. And that's something that UPI has done exceedingly well. And while there are multiple global projects and there are bilateral relationships, I think it's clearly going off pilot stage into something that can be really scalable.
Super. And John, I think the last question to you on stable coins, CBDCs, and AI, are they really unlocking cross-border payments and amid the big geopolitical turmoil that is happening?
Yes, certainly. Maybe I'll bring some perspective from another very important remittance corridor, noting that I think India's remittances account for about 3% of GDP. Another important geography where this is very much alive is the Mexico-US trade channel. And so recent estimates there are suggesting that 10% of the flow of remittances across those borders are being driven by stablecoins. And I think consumers in both those markets are reassured by the Genius Act and the travel of future regulation around the Clarity Act that give protection to consumers on both sides in Mexico and in the US. And so those are some very significant numbers where you're taking hundreds of basis points off the cost of shifting money. If you're a migrant worker, those numbers are incredibly important. And that's something, that very much delivers economic freedom to people. So that's a very tangible, real live example right now.
Yeah. And one last question, Suresh, to you. How do you see Visa as a company evolve? It used to be a very card network kind of company, and with how things have moved from wallets to account payments to tokenization and all the new age mechanisms with AI playing, how do you see the future of Visa?
That's an interesting question. So I think the big part is that clearly while money movement is at the core of it, but if you see network like Visa is like a digital public infrastructure, and primarily it's global in nature. So as we spoke about the fact that for any DPI, ultimately what you're talking about is the ability to move money in a trusted manner. So building the trust architecture, a lot of things we spoke about: fraud, risk detection, cyber resilience, ability to be sure what is the intent, how do you track the payment, and to make sure it reaches the right place. So there's a lot of work going in tokenization, in defining the right protocols for exchange, in agentic commerce and agentic payment protocols. So I think that is where we see the future, and that takes us far beyond just talking about it like a card company, but looking at a wide array of things which we actually put under our value added services, which actually strengthen the ecosystem to meet the challenges of having a population scale digital public infrastructure in place.
Super. Gentlemen, we are on time, but outstanding input from all of you. Thank you so much. And thank you to the audience for being patient just after lunch. But I think this is certainly a space where the verdict is not out. As we heard, how AI will impact, it will certainly impact, but how will it impact and how much companies will need to evolve? How will the business model evolve? Where will trust come in? How, which entity will get disintermediated? A lot is to be played out, but very good perspectives on direction and mitigants. And let's keep our fingers crossed. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, everyone there.
The technology underneath money may be getting more sophisticated, but the bargain with the customer remains remarkably simple. It has to work, it has to be trusted. Mr. Kalyan, Mr. Sethi, Mr. Singh, and Mr. O'Loughlin, thank you very much. And thank you, Rahul, for leading that discussion.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, for our next conversation, it's time to move ahead. But before that, there's a quick reminder. Would you like to put in, Suresh?
Yes, simultaneous Hindi to English translation is available for this session. Headsets can be collected from the counter at the back of the room. And do remember to return these headsets at the end of this session.
So, ladies and gentlemen, our next conversation turns to Bihar and to a challenge that every state competing for investment eventually has to confront. Because attracting interest is one thing, but creating the conditions for businesses to commit capital, build, hire, and stay for the long term is quite another.
Now, and that makes an investment-ready economy as much about execution as it is about ambition. Infrastructure, administration, employment, industry, and the ability to turn policy into progress on the ground.
Our next guest, ladies and gentlemen, brings experience across several of those areas, having held responsibilities spanning finance, home, urban development, agriculture, panchayati raj, and commercial taxes before taking office as Chief Minister of Bihar earlier this year.
His administration has placed industrial growth, investment, infrastructure, and employment at the center of its development agenda. Our next conversation is titled Bihar, Building an Investment-Ready Economy.
In conversation with ET's Anshuman Kumar, ladies and gentlemen, a bigger round of applause. Let's welcome Honorable Chief Minister of Bihar, Shri Samrat Chaudhary.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका सर इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स वर्ल्ड लीडर्स फोरम के इस सेशन में, इस मंच पे। बहुत बहुत बधाई आपको पहले बिहार के मुख्यमंत्री बनने के लिए। अभी 4 महीने पहले आप बिहार के मुख्यमंत्री बने, 4 महीने से थोड़ा ज्यादा हो रहा है। अगर हम पूछें कि चेंज बिहार में क्या हो रहा है या क्या आप कर रहे हैं पिछले 4-5 महीनों में राज्य की रूपरेखा बदलने में, तो ऐसा 2-4 स्टेप अगर आप बता सकें, 2-4 इनिशिएटिव बता सकें मुख्यमंत्री जी।
देखिए, सबसे बड़ी चीज है कि बिहार में, पहले तो आपको इकोनॉमिक्स टाइम्स के पूरे ग्रुप को धन्यवाद देता हूं कि आप लोगों ने मौका दिया कि बिहार जैसे राज्य की बात को आपके बीच में रख सके। बिहार बदलाव के करीब खड़ा है और इसलिए हम लोगों ने कहा कि बिल्ड बिहार और बिलीव इन बिहार के कंसेप्ट में बिहार आई है। और क्योंकि लंबे समय से किसी भी कारणवश हम पीछे छूट गए थे भारत के अन्य राज्यों से के तुलना में, अभी बेसिक नीड का काम हमारा लगभग पूरा हो गया। सड़क, बिजली, पानी, इंडस्ट्री हमारे फोकस नहीं थे। लेकिन अब गवर्नमेंट ने पूरी तरह कई पॉलिसीज बनाए, सुशासन के काम को अलग रखा। उसके लिए हम लोगों ने एक सहयोग के पूरा कार्यक्रम चलाया, क्योंकि मेरा अनुभव है कि जब मैं मुख्यमंत्री बना तो पहले 2-3 दिन तक तो लोगों ने बधाई दिया, फिर एक पत्र साथ में देना शुरू किया। कई समस्या होते थे, इलाके की समस्या, गांव की समस्या, या किसी को अपनी समस्या थी, उन चीजों के लिए वो, तो हम लोगों ने इसका पूरा टेक्नोलॉजी पर ले जाने का काम किया। पहली बार इस देश में एक व्यवस्था खड़ा किया और सहयोग कार्यक्रम शुरू किया। लगभग 6,42,000 लोगों ने उसमें आवेदन किए। 96% लोगों को गवर्नमेंट का तुरंत रिस्पांस मिला। 10 दिन में कार्रवाई का निर्देश मिला, 20 दिन में कार्रवाई का निर्देश मिला। हम नोटिस स्वयं देते हैं, मुख्यमंत्री के तौर पर मेरा कार्यालय उसमें नोटिस देता है, और यदि 30 दिन में किसी भी पदाधिकारी ने काम नहीं किया तो उसको निलंबित भी करने का काम हमारी सरकार करती है। ये ऑटोमेटिक मोड में होता है, इसमें लिए किसी व्यक्ति की रहने की आवश्यकता नहीं। तो सुशासन को हम लोगों ने व्यवस्थित शुरू किया। दूसरा है कि पॉलिसीज, जिससे कि बिहार में इंडस्ट्री के लिए लोग आए। बिहार में सेमीकंडक्टर पॉलिसी नहीं थे, हम लोगों ने 2026 में हम लोगों ने सेमीकंडक्टर पॉलिसी लाया, जीसीसी के ऊपर पॉलिसी लाया। इंडस्ट्री पॉलिसी में को और आगे हम कैसे इन्वेस्टमेंट के तौर पर बिहार में लाएं, इसको लाया। एक जमाना होता था कि बिहार एशिया का सबसे बड़ा कॉलोनी पटना के पाटलिपुत्रा को कहा जाता था, इसलिए मैंने कहा किसी कारणवश हम पीछे छूट गए। लेकिन अभी हम 12 टाउनशिप जो ऐतिहासिक हमारे धरोहर रहे, मगध पाटलिपुत्रा के नाम पर, अंग के नाम पर, मिथिला के नाम पर, कोसी के नाम पर, और जो पटना के बगल में सोनपुर का इलाका है, वहां पर पूरा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनाने के लिए लगभग 3.5 लाख एकड़ जमीन में हम लोग पूरा टाउनशिप बनाने का काम कर रहे हैं। और क्योंकि सबसे ज्यादा डेंसेस्ट पॉपुलेशन वाला राज्य बिहार है, हमसे पीछे बांग्लादेश छूट चुका है, हमसे पीछे इंडोनेशिया छूट चुका है। तो हम आबादी का लाभ लें, और जो बाहर हमारे लोग चले गए कर्म करने के लिए, कर्म भूमि पर काम करने के लिए, हम लोगों ने एक थीम भी रखा है, कर्म भूमि से जन्मभूमि पर आकर अपने काम, अपने बिहार को सुंदर बनाने का प्रयास कीजिए। इन सब चीजों पर लगातार हम लोग वर्कआउट कर रहे हैं। और 2 कमजोरी होती थी बिहार की। एक, आबादी, जीएसटी जब तक लागू नहीं था तब तक हमको कोई इसका लाभ नहीं मिलता था। अब जीएसटी का लाभ भी मिल रहा है, बिहार के इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को भी हम आगे ठीक कर पा रहे हैं, और राशि भी हमें पर्याप्त होता है, जिसके माध्यम से बिहार के अर्थव्यवस्था को भी ठीक करने का काम किया जाए। दूसरा, पानी जो नेपाल से चलकर आती है, हमारा पानी नहीं है, नेपाल हमको तबाह करता है। और आज से 20 साल पहले बिहार जैसे राज्य में 22 जिले हैं नॉर्थ बिहार में, और वहां पर 22 में से 16 ऐसे डिस्ट्रिक्ट थे जो बाढ़ के चपेट में आता था, और पूरी तरह 16 जिले में बाढ़ की स्थिति बनती थी, और लोगों को जीना भी एक तरह से दुर्वार था, और लोग को बाहर जाना पड़ता था। जिसके चलते आज जो बिहार के एक बड़ी आबादी बिहार के बाहर जाकर काम कर रही है, उसका मूल कारण भी यही था, जिसके चलते उन लोग को बाहर जाना पड़ता। अब धीरे धीरे जहां बिहार में मात्र 21 लाख हेक्टेयर जमीन सिंचित हुआ करता था, आज लगभग 44 लाख हेक्टेयर जमीन बन चुका है। और अभी मैं इस मीटिंग के पहले आदरणीय फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर मैडम से मिला, तो उनसे भी आग्रह किया कि कोसी मेची लिंक हो या अदर इरिगेशन के जो प्रोजेक्ट हैं, या जो नेपाल से आने वाली जो नदियां हैं, इसको कैसे और व्यवस्थित कर सकते हैं, जिससे कि बिहार के अर्थव्यवस्था में वहां का पानी वहां के लोगों के लिए काम आ सके। जैसे फरक्का एक बड़ा इशू हम लोगों के लिए है। आप देखते होंगे कि बक्सर में पानी जब गंगा माँ के पानी आता है, गंगा माँ की नदी में, तो वहां मात्र 500 क्यूमेक वहां पर पानी उपलब्ध होते हैं, और जो डिस्चार्ज हमको करना पड़ता है वो लगभग 1500 क्यूमेक पानी हमको डिस्चार्ज करना पड़ता है बांग्लादेश को। तो इंटरनेशनल टीटी है, हमको समझौता के आधार पर, लेकिन इस दौरान मात्र 4 महीना ही हम पानी का उपयोग कर सकते हैं। आप सोचिए बिहार के लिए क्या दुर्भाग्य रहा कि जुलाई, अगस्त, सितंबर, अक्टूबर 4 महीने हम अपना पानी, जिससे हम तबाह भी होते हैं, हम बर्बाद भी होते हैं, लेकिन यूज नहीं कर सकते। हमने कहा कि यूज करने का अधिकार तो साल भर दीजिए हमको, साल भर हम अपने पानी को अपने लोगों के लिए जमीन में पटवन करना हो, पानी पीने के लिए व्यवस्थित करना हो, क्योंकि साउथ बिहार हमारा पूरी तरह जो 16 डिस्ट्रिक्ट है उसमें 12 डिस्ट्रिक्ट हमारे ड्रॉट की स्थिति बन जाती है। तो उस इलाके में हम पानी को स्टोर कर पाए, वहां के लोगों को शुद्ध पेयजल पहुंचा पाए। जिस तरह आप जाते होंगे बोध गया या आप विष्णुपद मंदिर जाते होंगे जहां पिंडदान करने का काम किया जाता, क्योंकि मां सीता का श्राप लोग मानते हैं कि फल्गु नदी को श्राप है, तो वो सूख जाता है, ड्राई अप हो जाता है, और वहीं पर हमको पिंडदान करने का काम करना है। तो हमने आज ही कहा कि इंटरलिंकिंग का काम किया जाए और सोन नद को फल्गु नदी से जोड़ने का काम किया जाए, जिससे कि बिहार के, साउथ बिहार के लोगों को खेतों तक पानी पहुंच सके और पीने के लिए पानी मिल सके।
सर, इंडस्ट्री के ही लोग यहाँ पर बैठे हुए हैं, आपने इंडस्ट्री की बात करी। अब तक बिहार में जो हम देख रहे हैं, ज्यादातर इंडस्ट्री एग्री रिलेटेड ही है, चाहे इथेनॉल हो, मेज से इथेनॉल बनाने की बात हो, राइस से इथेनॉल बनाने की बात हो। तो बाकी इंडस्ट्रीज के लोग हैं और बाकी स्टेट्स भी हैं जो हर लोगों से इन्वेस्टमेंट चाह रहे हैं, हर कोई एक दूसरे को आकर्षित कर रहा है। ऐसे में आप क्या अलग ऑफर कर रहे हैं और किस तरह की इंडस्ट्रीज देख रहे हैं कि लोग बिहार में इन्वेस्ट करने आए?
देखिए, बिहार आबादी वाला राज्य है, टेक्नोलॉजी वाला राज्य है। बिहार देश के किसी कोने में जाइएगा तो आपको काम कराने के लिए बिहार के लोगों को ही प्रयोग करेंगे। तो सबसे ज्यादा स्किल्ड वर्कर आपको वहां मिलेंगे। आप बेंगलोर जाएंगे, दिल्ली आएंगे, सब जगह। तो एक तो आबादी का लाभ, कम मजदूरी में तुरंत बिहार में लोग आपको मिलेंगे। जमीन हम ऑफर कर रहे हैं, इंडस्ट्री के लिए बिजली हम उपलब्ध करा रहे हैं। बिहार जैसे राज्य में जहां 300 350 मेगावाट बिजली का प्रयोग हम करते थे, आज लगभग 10,000 मेगावाट से अधिक हम लोगों को उपलब्ध कराने का काम करें। 23,000 करोड़ रुपया सब्सिडी के तौर पर हम सहयोग भी करते हैं। लेकिन हम बिहार इसलिए कह रहे हैं आने के लिए, बिहार का गौरवशाली इतिहास रहा है, अर्थव्यवस्था बिहार भारत में शुरू हुआ, अखंड भारत का भी सपना उसी राज्य ने देखा था। वहीं नालंदा, वहीं विक्रमशिला, कई स्पिरिचुअल गुरु हमारे वहीं हुए, गौतम बुद्ध हो, गुरु गोविंद सिंह जी हो, भगवान महावीर हो, सारे लोग, चाहे स्वयं बापू को भी बापू की संज्ञान देने वाला राज्य वो रहा है। हम अर्थव्यवस्था में चाहते हैं कि बिहार आर्थिक रूप से समृद्ध हो, क्योंकि विकसित भारत तभी बनेगा जब बिहार समृद्ध हो। और बिहार में सेमीकंडक्टर, जीसीसी के पूरे सिस्टम्स खड़े होंगे। हमने उसके लिए पॉलिसीज लाया। पहले जो पॉलिसीज थे उसके हिसाब से लगभग 80% तक राशि भारत सरकार और राज्य सरकार मिलाकर हम जीसीसी और सेमीकंडक्टर में लोगों को सहयोग कर रहे थे। हम जमीन उपलब्ध करा रहे हैं और बिजली निर्बाध मिले, इसकी पूरी व्यवस्था करने का काम कर रहे हैं। इसलिए बिहार आबादी का लाभ लेने का समय है। बिहार में इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ठीक हुए हैं, अभी लगभग 4 एयरपोर्ट हमारे चालू हो गए और लगभग 10 एयरपोर्ट पर हमारा काम चल रहा है। छोटे बड़े एयरपोर्ट, लगभग 10 एयरपोर्ट पर काम चल रहा है। लगभग 6 एक्सप्रेसवे हम बनाने का काम कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि डेंसेस्ट पॉपुलेशन है, हमको सारी इसकी व्यवस्था चाहिए, दुनिया से जुड़ने का मार्केट भी चाहिए। और एग्रीकल्चर बेस्ड जो आपने कहा, रॉ मटेरियल सबसे अधिक मक्का स्टार्च जो बनता है, वो चाहे वो मोतिहारी जिला हो, खगड़िया हो, सबसे ज्यादा प्रोड्यूस करने वाला जिला एशिया में आज भी है। केला हो, कई चीजें हैं जो फूड प्रोसेसिंग के यूनिट्स में आपको मदद करने का काम करेगा।
सर, इस वक्त देश में हर जगह देखिए यूथ एजुकेशन को लेके, एजुकेशन रिफॉर्म्स को लेके कई जगह प्रोटेस्ट भी हो रहे हैं, छिटपुट बिहार में भी हुई हैं। एजुकेशन रिफॉर्म्स को लेके क्या आइडिया है आपका? आप क्या सोच रहे हैं इसके बारे में, और जो देश में हो रहा है उसके हिसाब से बिहार आगे कैसे स्टेप ले रहा
देखिए,
है?
बिहार में 534 ब्लॉक थे और अभी तक 278 डिग्री कॉलेज बिहार में थे। अभी हम लोगों ने तुरंत तय किया और 15 जुलाई से बिहार में 211 डिग्री कॉलेज, 551 जगह हम लोगों ने मॉडल स्कूल, पहले लोग तिलैया या रामकिशन मिशन स्कूल की चर्चा करते थे, सिमरतल्ला की स्कूल की चर्चा, हम लोगों ने 551 एक साथ मॉडल स्कूल ऑपरेट किया। और अब तो बिहार के बच्चों को रात के 11 बजे भी यदि टीचर की आवश्यकता है तो हम लोग ऑनलाइन उनके मोबाइल पर टीचर उपलब्ध कराने का काम कर रहे हैं, जिससे कि बच्चों को अपने घर में समझने में कोई दिक्कत नहीं हो। और अभी हम लोगों ने कमेटी का भी फॉर्म किया कि कोई सिटिंग जज, क्योंकि चाहे वो पेपर लीक का मामला हो या परीक्षा का इश्यूज हो या बच्चों को अच्छे गुणवत्तापूर्ण ट्रेनिंग के लिए कोई व्यवस्था खड़ा करना, उसके लिए एक हाई लेवल कमेटी सिटिंग जज या रिटायर्ड जज के लिए हम लोगों ने माननीय उच्च न्यायालय से आग्रह किया है कि इस पर एक हम लोगों का एक पैनल दे वो लोग, और उसको हम लोग फॉर्म करने का काम करें।
सर, अगर स्टेट को देखें रेवेन्यू जनरेशन के पॉइंट से, तो सोशल स्कीम्स पे आपका बहुत खर्चा है, काफी खर्चा सारे स्टेट्स का हो रहा है। मैं देख रहा था कि इलेक्ट्रिसिटी के सब्सिडी पे आप 20,000 करोड़ रुपए खर्च कर रहे हैं। तो रेवेन्यू जनरेशन का क्या स्रोत है बिहार के पास? बिहार कोई बहुत बड़ा इंडस्ट्रियल स्टेट नहीं है, पोर्ट नहीं है, तो बिहार जैसे स्टेट के लिए आप कैसे देख रहे हैं रेवेन्यू जनरेशन?
देखिए, बिहार जनता की आकांक्षा क्या है, ये सबसे महत्वपूर्ण रहा है। बिहार में अभी हम लोगों ने माइंस पिछले 17-18 साल से हमारे यहाँ बंद थे, क्योंकि एक अध्ययन चल रहा था कि सांस्कृतिक विरासत वाला कौन सा पहाड़ है और कहां पर हिस्ट्री है, हमारा ऐतिहासिक धरोहर क्या है। उसका अध्ययन जब हम लोगों ने कराया तो कई जगह इसको हम लोगों ने ओपन किया, और अगले 5 वर्षों के लिए हम लोगों ने माइंस के सेक्टर में सिर्फ लगभग 7 से 8 हजार करोड़ रुपया का रेवेन्यू जनरेट करने का पूरा रास्ता बनाया है। और भी कई, क्योंकि इंडस्ट्री खड़े होंगे, इंडस्ट्री को सेक्टर को हम लोग जोड़ना चाहते हैं। और जो जल प्रबंधन है, इस पर भी हम लोगों ने एक अच्छा प्लानिंग करके आगे बढ़ने का निर्णय लिया है। कोसी अभिशाप है हमारे लिए, कोसी को वरदान बनाने की तैयारी हम लोग कर रहे हैं। कोसी और गंडक, ये दो बड़ी नदियां हैं साउथ नॉर्थ बिहार में, और मां गंगा का जो नदी है, ये तीनों नदी पर हम लोगों ने प्लान किया है इंटीग्रेटेड, दोनों साइड जो इम्बैकमेंट है इसको 4 लेन में क्रिएट करें, हम पूरी तरह उसको फिक्स करें। आज भी हम लोगों ने आग्रह किया कि बक्सर में जब पानी आता है तो वो 4 किलोमीटर के स्पेन में होता है, यही जब बेगूसराय पहुंचता है वो 16 किलोमीटर होता है, और भागलपुर के इलाका में ये 20 किलोमीटर से अधिक का स्पेन होता है। हम गंगा माँ को भी एक लिमिट इलाके में फिक्स करें, जिससे कि गाद का जो प्रॉब्लम है उससे भी हमको निजात मिलेगा। हम इंडस्ट्रियल कॉरिडोर बना पाएंगे गंगा के किनारे, गंडक के किनारे। और कोई मुंबई जाता है या वर्ल्ड के लेवल पर कोई दुबई में घर खरीदता है तो लोग सी फेसिंग घर खोजते हैं। हमने कहा इस पर गंगा फेसिंग, कोसी फेसिंग और गंडक फेसिंग के नारायणी के नाम से इसको स्थापित करना चाहिए। इंडस्ट्रियल कॉरिडोर हम बनाए, हम एजुकेशनल हब बनाए, हम इंस्टीट्यूशनल हब बनाए, हम वहां पे बड़े टाउनशिप की कल्पना करें, जिससे कि ये पूरी तरह बिहार आज एग्रीकल्चर स्टेट माना जाता है, इसको आर्थिक रूप से समृद्ध करने के लिए इन सारे चीजों को जोड़कर ट्रांसपोर्टेशन के सेक्टर के साथ जोड़ते हुए इंडो नेपाल का एक पूरा रास्ता चेन बनाए कि हम वाटर ट्रांसपोर्टेशन से कैसे हल्दिया से सीधा बीरपुर तक हम पहुंचाने का काम करें। सड़क का दूसरा स्ट्रेच बनाए, वाटर ट्रांसपोर्टेशन का काम करें, ये सारी चीजों को करना चाहिए, जरूरत है।
सर अभी कुछ दिन पहले आपने एक बहुत बड़ा अनाउंसमेंट किया है कि अगले 4 सालों में 1 करोड़ जॉब आप क्रिएट करेंगे बिहार में। क्या रोड मैप है सर
देखिए,
उसका?
बिहार जब तत्कालीन मुख्यमंत्री नीतीश कुमार जी मुख्यमंत्री थे और आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी नरेंद्र मोदी जी विकसित भारत की कल्पना कर रहे थे, तो ये दोनों चीजों को जब हम लोगों ने देखा, तो इसको वर्कआउट जब हम लोगों ने किया पिछले चुनाव में, तो पिछले चुनाव में हम लोगों की घोषणा थी 10 लाख सरकारी नौकरी और 10 लाख रोजगार। लेकिन जब 2025 के चुनाव में हम जा रहे थे, तो हम लोगों को एहसास हुआ कि हम लोगों ने 53 लाख लोगों को सरकारी नौकरी और रोजगार दिया।
पिछले 5 साल
लगभग 12 लाख लोगों को रोजगार सरकारी नौकरी दिया और लगभग 51 साढ़े 51 लाख लोगों को रोजगार देने का काम किया। इस बार भी हम लोगों ने टारगेट किया कि 1 करोड़ लोगों को, क्योंकि प्रेरणा वहां से मिली। आज यदि प्रधानमंत्री जी ने लखपति दीदी का कंसेप्ट पूरे देश में लाया, तो आपको जानकर खुशी होगा कि बिहार अनोखा राज्य है जिसमें 1 करोड़ में से 43 लाख महिलाएं सिर्फ बिहार में लखपति दीदी है। ये अपने आप में ऐतिहासिक है। इसलिए बिहार बदल रहा है। बिहार में आर्थिक रूप से महिलाएं समृद्ध हो रही, इसलिए उनके लिए स्कूल खोले जा रहे, उनकी सुरक्षा की चिंता की जा रही। अभी तो राखी के दिन से हम लोगों ने कहा है, एक एक स्कूल कॉलेज और जहां भी हमारी महिलाएं काम करती हैं, वहां पर हम विशेष तौर पर पुलिस टीम का एक गठन कर रहे हैं, जिसको पुलिस दीदी के तौर पर हम कंस्टिट्यूट करें। आज देश में सबसे ज्यादा महिला पुलिस बल यदि कहीं है, तो 40,000 की संख्या में सबसे ज्यादा बिहार में है और किसी दूसरे राज्य में हमसे आधा है, हमसे आधा है किसी भी राज्य में। तो आप समझिए कि बिहार में महिलाओं को आगे लाना, क्योंकि महिला आगे होने का मतलब है गांव परिवार समृद्ध होना, और आज के तारीख में लगातार महिलाओं को इससे जोड़ा जा रहा है। और हमारे यहाँ तो महिलाएं 50% हमारे यहाँ आरक्षण है जो पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप होता है, जबकि जानकर खुशी होगी कि 59% सिर्फ महिलाएं चुनाव जीत कर आती है। इसलिए बिहार में लगातार इस पर काम किया जा रहा है।
सर लॉ एंड ऑर्डर की एक बात आती है, लॉ एंड ऑर्डर पे हमेशा सवाल उठता है और बिहार के बारे में लोगों के दिमाग में धारणा होती है कि लॉ एंड ऑर्डर के क्या कर रहे हैं उसको सुधारने के लिए, और अभी क्या स्थिति है?
बिहार एकदम सुरक्षित है। किसी को भी टेस्ट करना हो, हमको जानकारी दीजिए तो अच्छी बात है, नहीं दीजिए तो भी मैं 100% आपको कह सकता हूं, पटना एयरपोर्ट से निकलकर गया जी 4 घंटा लगता था पटना से जाने में। आज पटना से गया जी आप चले जाइए, 1.5 घंटे में पहुंचेंगे और 100% सुरक्षित पहुंचेंगे, कोई रोकने वाला आपको नहीं मिलेगा। ये कोई एकदम परसेप्शन, आप जब जाएंगे आप स्वयं महसूस करेंगे बिहार बदला हुआ है, बिहार के इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बदले हुए हैं, बिहार की कानून व्यवस्था बदली हुई है और कोई समर्थन करने वाला नहीं। बिहार के आम लोगों का स्वयं मानना है कि बिहार को सुरक्षित करते हुए बिहार में उद्योग, और हम में भरोसा कीजिए, बिहार में भरोसा कीजिए, बिहार आइए, बिहार की समृद्धि का रास्ता सब लोग खोलने का काम कीजिए।
सर एक रिलीजियस टूरिज्म को लेके भी काफी बात होती है बिहार में। आप बौद्ध सर्किट की बात करते हैं, महावीर सर्किट से जोड़ने की बात करते हैं, कितना काम उस पर हुआ है सर? क्योंकि काफी दिनों से बात हो रही है इस पर।
आप सिख समुदाय के किसी लोगों से मिलिए, 350वां जयंती 2016 में गुरु गोविंद सिंह जी का मनाया गया। जो भी पटना गया होगा वो बताए होंगे कि वर्ल्ड क्लास की व्यवस्था पटना के पटना सिटी इलाके में किया गया। और लगातार आज भी संत रविदास जी का कार्यक्रम चल रहा है, 650वां जयंती उनकी मनाई जा रही, पूरे स्तर पर पूरे बिहार में स्थापित किया जा रहा है। अभी हम हरिहर नाथ बाबा के कॉरिडोर का निर्माण कर रहे हैं, बोध गया के कॉरिडोर का स्थापना करने जा रहे हैं, विष्णुपद मंदिर के कॉरिडोर की स्थापना करने जा रहे हैं, और जिसको बख्तियारपुर खिलजी ने जलाने का काम किया था, नालंदा की पावन धरती को, उसको भी रिस्टोर किया। आप जाकर देखिए, हम लोगों ने उस विरासत जो खंडर है उसको भी बचा के रखा है, और जो नया बना है उसको भी दुनिया को दिखाने के लिए रखा है कि ये नया नालंदा है, और ये आज से 3000 वर्ष पहले ऐसा नालंदा जो दुनिया को मार्गदर्शन देने का काम करता था।
सर, आप बिहार के मुख्यमंत्री हैं, भाजपा के नेता, तो थोड़ी राजनीति की बात करते हैं कि आपको लगता है सर कि बांकीपुर का जो चुनाव अभी हुआ है वो बिहार के लिए एक टर्निंग पॉइंट है, क्योंकि एक नई तरह की पार्टी पहली बार आई और चुनाव जीत गई। अब तक ऐसा नहीं होता था, पहले से सेट पार्टियां थी जो चुनाव जीतती थी, तो ये पैटर्न एक नया बिहार में दिख रहा है। आप इसको कैसे देखते हैं?
देखिए, ये समय है, बिहार अपने रफ्तार पर चल रहा है, और बिहार राजनीति के साथ साथ, क्योंकि राजनीति का बड़ा केंद्र बिहार रहा है, लेकिन मैं जरूर आश्वस्त करता हूं बिहार के तरफ से, बिहार अगले 4 वर्षों में आज जो इकोनॉमी है इससे 4 गुना इकोनॉमी के साथ भारत के साथ खड़ा हुआ दिखेगा। इसलिए बिहार को आगे बढ़ाना है। यहाँ राजनीति में कुछ लोग आते हैं, जाते हैं, आएंगे, जाएंगे, कोई दिक्कत नहीं, आना चाहिए, लेकिन बिहार क्योंकि बदलना है और देश तभी बदलेगा। बिहार का जगह यदि भारत के नक्शे को देखिएगा तो हट वाला जगह पर बिहार है, तो बिहार समृद्धि का रास्ता खोलेगा। बिहार को स्वर्णिम काल देने वाला भी मगध की धरती, पाटलिपुत्रा की धरती रही है, इसलिए आगे भी बिहार समृद्धि का रास्ता खोजने का काम करेगा, और इन सब चीजों को आते रहेंगे, जाते रहेंगे, लेकिन बिहार बदलाव के रास्ते पर चलता रहेगा।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर। So ladies and gentlemen, this was Bihar Chief Minister who was talking about changing Bihar, a new Bihar. Let's give a very big round of applause for Bihar Chief Minister Samrat
बहुत
Chaudhary
बहुत
ji.
धन्यवाद।
Thank you so much, sir.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
An investment-ready economy is ultimately proven by what gets built after the announcements are made. Honorable Chief Minister, thank you for joining us. Anshuman, thank you for leading the conversation. A big round of applause, and we'll move on to our next discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, our next address turns to the architecture behind cross-border capital. India has long been discussed as a destination for investment. The more interesting question now is whether it can become one of the places from which global capital is structured, deployed, and connected to opportunities across markets.
Our next speaker works across finance, law, compliance, and governance, giving him a close view of what that shift requires in practice. As partner and chief executive officer of Spec Finance, he leads the firm's cross-border financing and investment activity. He is also a partner at Dinesh Singh Law Associates and is closely involved with the Gift City ecosystem.
His address today is titled India from an Investment Destination to a Global Capital Hub. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Karan Dinesh Singh Rawat.
Thank you guys for your welcome. I feel overhyped about my role myself. So, good evening, everybody. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I want to thank ET for taking us on as their title sponsors. When we started having this conversation with ET to be the title sponsor of this event, my first call with ET was, and they did not say it to me out loud, but their question is, "Who the hell are you guys? And what do you do?" And when we started speaking who the hell we are, they understood what we are doing, what we want to do, and how this could be a synergy which could take us long. I am expected to speak to all of you about India being from an investment destination to a global capital hub. But I want to speak about something which is more important and close to my heart, which is India being a hub of human capital. How there are a lot of possibilities and opportunities in plain sight which we do not see. I remember my journey with Gift City. I landed up in Gift City a few years ago when Gift City was just a few buildings and probably a few more companies. And everybody would, ask me what gifts you get from Gift City. But Kirill is sitting in front row. Kirill is a friend who did a meeting and asked, what gifts do you get from Gift Cities? But you don't get any gift from Gift Cities. When I was there in Gift City, I was there for a short assignment. I wanted to be there, do my job and leave. I've been somebody who has been born and brought up in Chandigarh, in Delhi. I love the North life. Gujarat just did not convince me. But Gujarat became like a cobra in my neck, which I could not let go of. But slowly and gradually, I understood that the cobra is not bad. The cobra is something like a Shiva avatar now, I think. Now a cobra which is sitting and guiding me and protecting me. When I think of, of human capital, I feel we are at a unique opportunity and stage in our country where we have the most young population in this entire world. What does that give us? That gives us a lot of opportunity. That opportunity is not just money. That opportunity is to be builders, not users. That opportunity is to be providers, not consumers. All of us have been, moving towards a consumerism market. But as individuals, I think India has always been a civilization, which has been a civilization of builders, not consumers. So when I was there in Gift City in a very raw form, I saw a very simple thing, which that life and not took away from me, which was how simplicity can achieve a lot of greatness. Greatness in capital, greatness in growth, and greatness in empathy and sympathy that you can feel in people. So my first few days, I used to think that when am I going to go back? But when I understood that there is a certain pace in how this city moves, I understood that there are, and I used to be a staunch believer of miracles, but I understood a thing very weirdly through my experiences in Gift City, that miracles don't happen to you. Miracles are already there. They are in plain sight. You just have to identify them and make them your own. Gift City was that miracle for me. I was a young lawyer who turned up in Gift City, who was trying to do a job. Eventually, when I left, 6 months into it, I was a entrepreneur with millions of dollars behind my investment. Does not mean I was just crossing a road and somebody handed me these millions of dollars. It meant that this city gave me this opportunity to have this millions of dollars and have this opportunity to be as young as I am, to and yet have this faith from people to put this money in my hands that I could invest it. So when I think and when I see, as a youngster, what we can do for our nation, I feel sometimes we underestimate and tend not to think about things which the nation has already done for us. For example, I would have never thought that Gift City is a project where somebody like me can go and make a career for himself. It was a miracle which was already there, but I never recognized it because I never knew it was there. A lot of us have a lot of complaints, have a lot of bad things, have a lot of bad thoughts, but we never ever count our blessings. Our blessings are not just which we can think of. Our blessings are which are in plain sight. Our blessings are opportunities which we are not taking. What's the difficult part which I understood in all of this? The difficult part is that we have to get out of our comfort zone. Gujarat was not my comfort zone, but then yet I decided to make it my comfort zone because everybody is the king in their own arena. When you go into somebody else's arena and try to wrestle there, that is when it you have that idea of what the world is. So through this address, yes, India is an investment destination. India is a global capital hub. I can say all the buzzwords to you. But what I want to tell all of you is that India is a hub for human capital. We have a lot of talent, we have a lot of history, and we have a lot of people. We come from a country of culture and civilization. Everybody wants to tell us we are barbarics, we don't have civic sense, we don't know how to walk, we don't know how to talk. But we are a country with the oldest civilization. We have to recognize the power that it gives us. We have to recognize, the unique position that it puts us as an individual. We have to unlock the power of our history to make a future which is which is I think good for everybody, not just for India. I think when you have 1.5 billion 1.5 billion people, I only remember dollars, I'm sorry, nowadays. When you have a country of 1.5 billion people, you're not just paving the way for yourself, you're also paving the way for the rest of the world. When we are seeing population implosion happening all over the world. India is the country where youngsters feel that they don't have any hope. I think you all have a lot of hope. I had a lot of hope. I had a lot of hope which I did not recognize. Maybe all of you have a lot of hope you don't recognize. So when you are thinking of these miracles, don't think of somebody would come to you, give you $1 billion and ask you to make $100 billion company. It would be somebody who's already created an opportunity. You go to that opportunity, get out of your comfort zone, get your hands dirty, and take that opportunity hands on. Everybody needs to get their hands dirty. You know, everybody likes to wear, like all of us in this room, we are wearing nice suits, nice ties. Everybody likes this life. But when real things are built, you have to get your hands dirty. You have to be hands on. If I tell about my journey with Spec, I remember Spec being just two people in a small room in an accelerator in Gift City. From there, we made it one of the best companies in Gift City. And from there, we're going to make it one of the main catalysts of global finance and of how finance will be treated. Finance not for money, finance for good of all. Finance, wealth not for wealth, wealth for good of all. Because, you know, I don't think you need to make the rich richer. It's quite ironic I run a finance company and I'm saying this to you. But no, the fact is, wealth is built through people, not through money. Money is an instrument of management. I The government uses it to manage the population. The employers use it to manage its employees. But underlying it, all of this is humans which are being built, which are going to build a secured, happy, and prosperous tomorrow for all of you and all of us. I thank all of you and I thank ET for this opportunity. And I really, really want to thank SK, Preeti, Lal, Yogesh, Rohit. I think this is going to be a long association that I'm going to have with ET. And we are going to work with them for the benefit of the civilization. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Rawat, for drawing that important distinction between attracting global capital and becoming one of its hubs.
A quick reminder before our next conversation. Once again, simultaneous Hindi to English translation is available. You will need it for this session if you don't understand Hindi. Headsets can be collected from the counter at the back of the room and returned there at the end of the conversation.
Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, global capital may move across borders, but its impact is ultimately measured by what takes shape on the very ground. That brings us back to the growth ambitions of India's states, and now we look specifically to Chhattisgarh.
Now, Chhattisgarh's natural resources have long given it an important place in the country's industrial economy. What is changing is the breadth of their ambition.
Under our next guest, the state has been making a concerted push to translate its resource strength into a much wider industrial base, attracting investment into newer sectors, ranging from semiconductors and data centers to pharmaceuticals, textiles, and agro-processing.
And the response has been significant. Under Chhattisgarh's new industrial policy, the state has received investment proposals worth nearly 8 lakh crore rupees, with the focus increasingly moving from attracting capital to getting projects off the ground.
And leading that effort is a public courier that has traveled from the panchayat to parliament to the state legislature and the union government, and since 2023 to the chief minister's office.
Our next conversation is aptly titled Chhattisgarh's Next Leap from Resources to Industry.
So, ladies and gentlemen, in conversation with ET's Nidhi Sharma, please welcome the Honorable Chief Minister of Chhattisgarh, Shri Vishnu Deosai. Over to you, Ms. Nidhi.
थैंक यू वर्ल्ड लीडर्स फोरम में आपका स्वागत है सर। छत्तीसगढ़ अभी तक हम लोग हमेशा समझते रहे हैं छत्तीसगढ़ यानी बस्तर, बस्तर यानी नक्सलिज्म, माओइज्म। ये कितना बदला है, क्योंकि हमारा ये वाला साल शुरुआत ही ऐसे हुई कि इंडिया को पहली बार नक्सलिज्म फ्री कहा गया। क्या सच में सुरक्षित है बस्तर अभी?
सबसे पहले तो इस आयोजन के लिए लीडरशिप समिट के लिए द इकोनॉमिक्स टाइम्स को बहुत बहुत हम धन्यवाद देंगे, आभार व्यक्त करना चाहेंगे। और आज छत्तीसगढ़ के तरफ से यहाँ पर उपस्थित आप सबों का हम स्वागत भी करना चाहेंगे। और छत्तीसगढ़ एक समय नक्सल ग्रसित प्रदेश के रूप में जाना जाता था। करीब 4 से 5 दशकों से नक्सलवाद से ग्रसित था छत्तीसगढ़। और शुरुआती के दौर में 15 वर्षों तक 2003 से 2018 तक हम लोगों की सरकार रही। डॉक्टर रमन सिंह जी चीफ मिनिस्टर थे, तो उन्होंने भी नक्सलवाद के साथ साहस के साथ लड़ाई लड़ी। बीच में हम लोगों की सरकार नहीं रही। 2023 में फिर हम लोग सरकार में आए और सरकार बनते के साथ हम लोग का सौभाग्य हुआ कि एक तो डबल इंजन की सरकार बनी और माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी का आशीर्वाद मिला। हमारे देश के यशस्वी गृह मंत्री अमित शाह जी की दृढ़ इच्छा शक्ति हुई और जब जनवरी 2024 में वहां पर नक्सल पीड़ित प्रदेशों का समीक्षा बैठक हुआ तो पता चला कि सबसे ज्यादा नक्सलवाद छत्तीसगढ़ में ही बचा है। 3/4 से ज्यादा नक्सलवाद छत्तीसगढ़ में बचा है और इसका कारण ये था कि पिछली सरकार में भारत सरकार को सहयोग नहीं मिला था और जो 1/4 नक्सलवाद था वो 6-7 प्रदेशों में थोड़ा थोड़ा बचा था। लेकिन डबल इंजन की सरकार और माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का आशीर्वाद, गृह मंत्री जी की दृढ़ इच्छा शक्ति, हम लोग नई रणनीति के साथ नक्सलवाद के खिलाफ में लड़ाई प्रारंभ किए। जवानों का हौसला अफजाई किए, लोगों के बीच में गए तो लोगों का भी भरपूर आशीर्वाद मिला और लोग भी 40-50 वर्षों से विकास से अछूता थे, तो उनके मन में भी एक था कि नक्सलवाद से मतलब मुक्त होना चाहिए। नक्सलवाद से वो भी मुक्त होना चाहते थे। तो इस सब के कारण जो एक असंभव सा काम लगता था कि पता नहीं नक्सलवाद कभी समाप्त होगा कि नहीं, इस नक्सलवाद को समाप्त करने में हम लोग सफल हुए हैं और जो छत्तीसगढ़ जैसे प्रदेश के विकास में एक बड़ा बाधक नक्सलवाद था, उसको हटा पाने में हम लोग सफल हुए हैं।
अभी क्या स्थिति है? जो आपने एक बार कहा था एक साक्षात्कार में कि आइए इंद्रावती नदी के किनारे आप बैठ सकते हैं, चित्रकूट फॉल्स देख सकते हैं, क्या बस्तर उतना ही सुरक्षित है?
जी अब बिल्कुल छत्तीसगढ़ और बस्तर बिल्कुल सुरक्षित हो गया है। आप कभी भी कहीं भी रात के 12-1 बजे भी कहीं भी ट्रैवल कर सकते हैं, कहीं भी जा सकते हैं, किसी तरह का कोई भय नहीं।
बस्तर का युवा जो नक्सली बन गया था, नक्सलवाद की तरफ रुख हुआ, अब वापसी आ रहे हैं, नॉर्मल अपने कामकाज कर रहे हैं। तो अभी युवा के लिए जो एम्प्लॉयमेंट है, एम्प्लॉयमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज है, वो क्या है बस्तर में, या क्या आपकी सरकार उनको किस तरीके से वो अपॉर्चुनिटी दे रही है?
एक तो हम लोग अच्छी पुनर्वास नीति लेकर आए और आह्वान किए कि हिंसा से किसी चीज का समाधान नहीं होता है, इसलिए आप सब लोग हिंसा छोड़िए, विकास की मुख्य धारा से जुड़िए और एक अच्छी पुनर्वास नीति दिए। इसके कारण 4000 से ज्यादा नक्सली आत्मसमर्पित भी किए, उनको भी आज स्किलिंग करके रोजगार से जोड़ने का काम हम लोग कर रहे हैं। और चूंकि बस्तर क्षेत्र पहले एक जिला होता था, आज वो 5 जिलों में विभक्त हो गया है। और जब एक जिला था तो वो केरल प्रांत से एरिया वाइज बड़ा था। और प्राकृतिक दृष्टिकोण से बस्तर बहुत सुंदर क्षेत्र है, धरती का स्वर्ग हम बस्तर को कह सकते हैं। वहां पर अनेकों वाटरफॉल्स हैं, कुटुमसर का गुफा है, आपका अबुझमाड़ जैसा विशाल 5000 वर्ग किलोमीटर में फैला हुआ जंगल है। ऐसा घना जंगल है कि जहाँ नीचे तक सूर्य की रोशनी भी नहीं पहुंच पाती है। तो इस तरह से और टूरिज्म की अपार वहां पर संभावनाएं हैं। और हमारा जो धुड़मारास एक गांव है बस्तर का, अंतर्राष्ट्रीय पर्यटन संस्थान उसको बेस्ट विलेज के रूप में टूरिज्म के सेक्टर में चयन किया है। तो इससे आप अंदाजा लगा सकते हैं कि उस क्षेत्र में टूरिज्म की कितनी संभावनाएं हैं।
बस्तर और दूसरे जिलों में जैसे छत्तीसगढ़ माना जाता है खनिज प्रधान प्रदेश है, तो दूसरी भी इंडस्ट्रीज के लिए आप अपने दरवाजे खोल रहे हैं? क्या कोर सेक्टर्स हैं जिनको छत्तीसगढ़ बढ़ावा दे रहा है?
देखिए, वैसे तो पूरे छत्तीसगढ़ को भगवान ने बहुत आशीर्वाद दिया है। खनिज संसाधन के हिसाब से बहुत समृद्ध प्रदेश है। सभी तरह के खनिज संसाधन हमारे छत्तीसगढ़ के अंदर में है। वहाँ पर आयरन ओर है, कोयला है, बॉक्साइट है, टीना का हम लोग एकमात्र उत्पादक प्रदेश हैं। वहाँ गोल्ड, डायमंड सब कुछ है। और वहाँ पर फॉरेस्ट प्रोड्यूस भी बहुत है। 44% भूभाग वनों से आच्छादित है, सैकड़ों तरह के फॉरेस्ट प्रोड्यूस हैं। और वहाँ की मिट्टी भी उर्वरा शक्ति से भरपूर है। तो भगवान बहुत अच्छे से छत्तीसगढ़ को बनाया है। लेकिन ये नक्सलवाद विकास में एक बड़ा बाधक था। अब ये रोड़ा भी हट गया है, तो अब तेजी से छत्तीसगढ़ अब विकास के क्षेत्र में आगे बढ़ेगा।
युवा हमें जंतर मंतर पे भी दिखा, पुणे, मुंबई, बहुत राज्यों में युवा जो है वो सड़कों पे आकर बहुत सारे प्रोटेस्ट दिखे। कहाँ पे कमी रह गई है भाजपा सरकार में और उसको कैसे पूरा किया जा सकता है? और छत्तीसगढ़ में कोई ऐसे विशेष कदम उठाए हैं जिससे युवाओं को ज्यादा रोजगार मिले?
देखिए, एक तो युवाओं के लिए हम लोग जो पहली आवश्यकता होती है शिक्षा, उसकी व्यवस्था कर रहे हैं। हमारे पूर्वजों ने कहा है कि शिक्षा विकास का मूल मंत्र है। किसी भी क्षेत्र में विकास करना है तो शिक्षा जरूरी है। और इसीलिए शिक्षा को हम लोग काफी आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं। युवाओं के लिए आज हर तरह की सुविधा और शिक्षण की जितनी संस्थाएं हैं अपने प्रदेश के अंदर, हमारे प्रदेश को निर्माण हुए 25 वर्ष हुए हैं। और 25 वर्षों में शिक्षण की सारी संस्थाएं वहां पर स्थापित किए हैं। अब पहले तो ऐसा था कि जब हम प्राइमरी स्कूल में पढ़ते थे तो हम जिस गांव में जिस स्कूल में पढ़ते थे वहां पर 5वीं बोर्ड एग्जाम लिखने की व्यवस्था नहीं थी। हमको मतलब 6-7 किलोमीटर बाहर दूसरे गांव के स्कूल में परीक्षा देनी पड़ी थी। लेकिन आज 25 वर्षों में इतना विकास हुआ है कि हर पंचायत में प्राइमरी स्कूल, मिडिल स्कूल, हाई स्कूल, हर विकास खंड में कॉलेज, हायर सेकेंडरी, ये सारी व्यवस्था। और जितनी भी राष्ट्रीय स्तर की संस्थाएं हैं, आईआईटी, आईआईएम, ट्रिपल आईटी, नीट, आपका लो का यूनिवर्सिटी, एम्स जैसी सारी संस्थाएं हैं। तो हम लोग युवाओं के लिए तो ये कर रहे हैं। और प्रतियोगी परीक्षा में उनकी तैयारी के लिए हम लोग यहाँ भी एक यूथ हॉस्टल बनाए हैं दिल्ली के अंदर में। और अभी हम लोग जब सरकार में आए तो जो 50 सीट का था उसको बढ़ा के 200 सीट किए हैं। और पहली बार जो यूपीएससी की प्रारंभिक परीक्षा, उसमें 13 बच्चे हमारे यहाँ के यूथ हॉस्टल में रह के उत्तीर्ण किए हैं। और हम लोग प्रयास जैसी संस्था अपने प्रदेश में चला रहे हैं, जो आवासीय होता है और सिलेक्टेड बच्चे वहां पर रहते हैं, सिलेक्टेड टीचर रहते हैं। उसी तरह से नालंदा परिसर हम लोग 34 जगह खोल रहे हैं और नालंदा परिसर में हमारे युवाओं को मतलब स्टडी मटेरियल हम लोग दे रहे हैं वहां पर, ताकि आगे प्रतियोगी परीक्षा के लोग तैयारी कर पाए। उसके बाद उनको रोजगार की भी व्यवस्था कर रहे हैं। नई इंडस्ट्रियल पॉलिसी 2024-30 लाए हैं, जिसमें विशेषकर हमारा जो बस्तर सरगुजा संभाग है, जो एसटी एससी के हमारे लोग हैं, उसमें आपके अग्निवीर के रिटायर्ड जवान हैं, महिलाओं को विशेष प्राथमिकता नई उद्योग नीति में हम लोग दिए हैं और रोजगार पर विशेष जोर हम लोगों का है नई उद्योग नीति में। और उसमें अगर स्थानीय लोगों को कोई उद्यमी अपने उद्यम में 1000 लोगों को रोजगार देता है तो उसको विशेष प्रोत्साहन राशि देने की व्यवस्था है। तो ये सब हम लोग युवाओं को रोजगार देने के लिए भी कर रहे हैं और टूरिज्म को भी हम लोग नई उद्योग नीति में शामिल किए हैं। एक तो उधर होम स्टे होता है, होम स्टे मतलब जो विदेशी टूरिस्ट होते हैं वो होटलों में नहीं रह के लोगों के घरों में रहना पसंद करते हैं और इससे सीधे सीधे उस परिवार को आर्थिक लाभ होता है। तो हम लोग होम स्टे को भी नई उद्योग नीति में शामिल किए हैं और एक परिवार को 5 कमरे बनाने के लिए हम लोग लोन और सब्सिडी की भी व्यवस्था कर रहे हैं। और विशेषकर बस्तर के क्षेत्र में और सरगुजा संभाग में टूरिज्म की अपार संभावना है। तो टूरिज्म की दृष्टि से भी हम लोग एक टूरिज्म मिशन पर भी हम लोग काम कर रहे हैं। और हमारा जो बस्तर है वहां पर सैकड़ों तरह के फॉरेस्ट प्रोड्यूस हैं, तो उसका भी वैल्यू एडिशन करा के वहां के युवाओं को रोजगार से जोड़ने का काम हम लोग कर रहे हैं। और जो सुरक्षा कैंप अब नक्सलवाद समाप्ति के बाद खाली होते जा रहे हैं, उनको सेवा डेरा के रूप में परिवर्तित कर रहे हैं। सेवा डेरा मतलब प्रशिक्षण केंद्र। अभी एक नेतानार गांव जो गुंडाधुर एक जो ट्राइबल में स्वतंत्रता संग्राम सेनानी हुए उनका गांव नेतानार, तो पिछले बार हमारे यूएचएम साहब के करकमलों से सेवा डेरा का शुभारंभ किए हैं। तो वहां पर इमली पूरे जंगलों में नेचुरल रूप से है, तो उसका पैकेजिंग का काम शुरू किए हैं। ऑर्गेनिक वहां पर राइस होता है, हमारा छत्तीसगढ़ धान का कटोरा कहलाता है। हजारों किस्म के वहां पर धान है, बहुत बारीक बारीक और बहुत सुगंधित राइस होता है। इतना अच्छा चावल है कि अगर घर में चावल बन रहा है तो बगल से गुजरने से मतलब चावल का महक अनुभव होगा। तो ऐसे चावलों को भी वहाँ का ग्रामीण पद्धति से ढेकी बोलते हैं, उससे चावल बनाकर उसका भी पैकिंग का काम शुरू कर रहे हैं। सिलाई प्रशिक्षण का काम शुरू कर रहे हैं और युवाओं के लिए आने वाले समय में और 70 ऐसे सुरक्षा कैंप जो खाली होंगे उसको सबको सेवा डेरा के रूप में परिवर्तित करने का सरकार का प्लान है। इससे उस क्षेत्र के लोगों को प्रशिक्षित करके उनको रोजगार से जोड़ने का भी सरकार की चिंता है।
एक आखिरी सवाल, जब आपके पास अभी इन्वेस्टर आते हैं उनको क्या आप संदेश देते हैं? कैसे आप बोलते हैं कि आप आइए और सब सुरक्षित है? क्या विश्वास हो रहा है उनको?
जी बिल्कुल हो रहा है। और जैसा मैंने नई उद्योग नीति का जिक्र किया है, अभी हमको लगता है कि साल 1.5 साल ही इसको लॉन्च किए हुए हैं और इतने कम समय में 8.25 लाख करोड़ से ज्यादा का एमओयू हो चुका है और धरातल में कई काम आ भी गए हैं। उसमें आपका कोर सेक्टर का भी है, पावर सेक्टर है, आपका स्टील है, उसके बाद आज ग्रीन एनर्जी है, आपका एआई है, आपका इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स है, टेक्सटाइल है, हैंडलूम है। ये सबके क्षेत्र में भी उद्योग आ रहे हैं और आपके माध्यम से हम कहना चाहेंगे देश विदेश के सभी निवेशकों से कि छत्तीसगढ़ आए। अब पहले का छत्तीसगढ़ नहीं है कि वहां पर नक्सलवाद है। अब पूरी तरह से नक्सलवाद की समाप्ति हो गई है और कहीं भी जाने आने में कोई वहां पर डर भय का बात नहीं है और उद्योग के लिए बहुत अच्छा वातावरण छत्तीसगढ़ के अंदर में है। खनिज संसाधन भरपूर है, वहां पर बिजली है, पानी है, मानव संसाधन है। तो हर तरह से मतलब उद्योग के लिए अनुकूल वातावरण है और नई उद्योग नीति भी है और सरकार नई उद्योग नीति में सिंगल विंडो सिस्टम, वन क्लिक सिंगल विंडो सिस्टम भी उसमें लागू किया है। कोई परेशानी 10 दफ्तर का चक्कर भी लगाना नहीं पड़ेगा और हमारी पूरी टीम, उद्योग विभाग की टीम सहयोग के लिए खड़ी रहती है। तो आपके माध्यम से हम यही कहना चाहेंगे सभी निवेशकों से कि छत्तीसगढ़ आमंत्रण है आप सबका, सब आएं और वहां पर निवेश करें।
धन्यवाद सर, थैंक यू।
जी, आपका भी धन्यवाद।
Now, Chhattisgarh has long supplied the raw materials of industry. Its next leap is to create more of that value within the state. Honorable Chief Minister, thank you for joining us. Nidhi, thank you for leading the conversation. Time to move on.
Moving on to the next session. But before we do that, Suresh, I have a question. How do investors actually describe a place they haven't invested in yet?
Usually it's called an emerging opportunity.
And once everyone else arrives?
Crowded market.
So when was the perfect time?
Usually about 6 months ago before you invested.
So where does the smart money go next?
That's a very good question. That's the one question no investor wants to answer too loudly for fear of getting it wrong.
But fortunately, all our panelists next have microphones.
So they have no option but to be loud.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to move on. It's time to turn our direction towards capital and to a question that investors are constantly having to answer. Not simply where the long-term opportunity lies, but where the next dollar goes.
Because conviction and timing are not the same thing. Capital is choosing between markets, sectors, and time horizons, while the trifecta, AI, geopolitics, and valuations, keep redrawing that shortlist.
And deals make these choices visible. They show us where businesses and investors are prepared to commit real capital to what comes next.
Now, that's the territory for our next panel, the new geography of capital. Where is smart money headed?
And joining us for this is a formidable lineup of panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome President and Chief Executive Officer of Sun Life, Kevin D. Strain, Senior Managing Director and Head of Global Affairs at Lux, Baroness Sharon White, Global Chair of Investment Banking at JP Morgan, Anu Iyengar, Executive Director of IFSCA, Dr. Dipesh Shah, and Founder and Executive Chairman of S4 Capital Monks, Sir Martin Sorrell.
Moderating the discussion is the Associate Editor at the Economic Times, Arijit Barman. Arijit?
Thank you, guys. Am I audible? Okay, great. So where is smart money headed? Well, if you're an optimist or an Indophile, you would say to reap the benefits of our demographic dividend. But if you're a realist, you would say it's moving to mega deals in US, which Anu here is stitching together. Some may say smart global capital has also chased the AI semiconductor booms in Taipei and Seoul, tripling Korean stocks and doubling Taiwanese equities, while the war in Iran has actually torn a hole in our fragile balance of payments. The plunging rupee isn't helping either. So clearly, these are thrilling times as they are turbulent, but it's my privilege to be with all of you to navigate the world of high finance over the next half an hour. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us and welcome to the World Leaders Forum. I know straight off, I wanted to understand from you that the Indian benchmark index hasn't gone anywhere in the past 2 years. There is record underperformance and under ownership. How much of this you think is cyclical and therefore will turn on its own, and how much of it is structural and therefore needs a serious nudge?
Easy question right at the beginning. Thank you for that. So I'd say it's you have three trends that is happening globally that's influencing that. One, and I don't think there's any panel or any conversation that any of us have done in the last 18 months where we haven't used the word AI, and so I'll get right to it. So the amount of capital that the AI ecosystem needs has really been the number one priority for all capital across the globe.
Right.
And those amounts, Martin and I were talking about this earlier today, has almost become silly now because it's 500 billion to a trillion of capital requirements that is related to the AI ecosystem. So that has nothing to do with India specifically. Now it happens that the hyperscalers are in the US. Some of the other countries that you mentioned, Taiwan, Korea, beneficiaries of that same AI ecosystem, a lot of insurance money going into the AI ecosystem, power generation, chips, data centers, all of that. So that has taken money out of everything that is not that, which includes currently India. Now that may change in the future, but currently it includes that. So you have seen, if you compare India weighting to the MSCI index, India is underweighted. And if you have to match the index, you would need about $100 billion to come into India to match it. In the last 6 weeks, you've seen a bit of a reversal from the oversold nature of software, as well as the oversold nature of India. You've seen a little bit of reversal, but it's going to take a while for that to happen because AI capital need continues to be pretty high. So that, I think, is the trend. Because if you look at the Indian market itself, valuations are very comparable to the US. I think both is around 20 times PE. The volatility index of the VIX is lower in India than in the US. So more stable, relatively equal valuation with more new company formation, relatively stable regulatory environment. And so naturally, you should have more capital flow in here, but the AI trend has dominated capital.
Right. Kevin, you're one of the largest insurance company in Philippines. You have a massive presence in Greater China. I wanted to understand from you the Asian perspective, because it's not just India. The honeymoon of corporate America is actually affecting or having a wider fallout across Asia. How are you seeing, stress, or is there a stress across pockets of Asia? And what will that do in terms of recalibration of policymaking across the region?
Well, thanks for the question. And when we stand back and we think about Asia, I think we always have to remember the basics. There's 4 billion people that live here, the fastest growing middle class in the world, and a significant high net worth market that's available to us. And so if you think about the size and the demographics of the markets that is there, we are seeing growth alongside of that. I took over our Asia business in 2012 and I ran it for 5 years. When I took that business, Sun Life has been in Asia for 160 years. At the time, we were making $100 million a year in income. This year, we're trending towards $900 million in income. The growth potential, given the tailwinds that exist, the structural tailwinds of the growing middle class, the growing economies, the size, half the world's population, you can't outweigh that. So the fastest growing part of our insurance and wealth operations in the world is in Asia, and we expect that to continue. We think that that's structural. We're not thinking about the stock market necessarily or how that's behaving. We're looking for long-term growth, 160 years of history, another 160 years is what we want, and fundamentally investing into that strategic growth. The other thing you find here is the dynamics of well-educated populations, driven populations, people make the difference in all businesses and in all economies. And I think that's what we're betting on in the long term. And India benefits with that as well. When I step back and I look at India, some of the best people we have in the world are in our Indian business. We have fantastic people in our partnerships here. We have fantastic people running our life insurance and our asset management business. And we've created an incredible value then. Our India joint venture is growing its top line at 25% per year. And our asset management business, along with the beer list, is 100 billion in AUM and a 3 billion market cap. So I would say that you have to think long term. Of course, our AI, defense, robotics, pharmaceuticals are all growing quickly, but other things are growing along with it, and the fundamentals here are good for that.
Right. Sharon, I mean, Anu touched upon this point, but would you agree, at least in the short term, would you agree if I say economies that are not embedded in the US AI sector are finding it harder to attract foreign capital? Generally, decent domestic growth is not enough anymore.
I mean, I think it's a bit of an oversimplification. So we're the biggest institutional investor in infrastructure globally, big everywhere, big in the US, big in Canada, big in the rest of the world. And I think maybe one of the things that Kevin and I share is that we're not looking at the next quarter or the next 12 months. We're looking at returns over the next 10, 20, in some cases, we're holding assets for 30 years. And so when you look at those fundamental structural positives, the demography, the energy, the talent, you know, a market like India, we have probably not been as positive about since we became a more international, global investor. And I think perhaps there hasn't been enough attention on the energy transition. Obviously, we've got some very difficult events which are causing all of us to think more about energy autonomy and renewables, even with some of the sort of cultural, you know, sort of cultural sort of headwinds. We think there are enormous opportunities in grids, power generation, transmissions, renewables. I know nuclear is a conversation in India. We've been the first institutional investor to invest in nuclear, which we've done in the UK in a, you know, in a mega deal, maybe not quite as large as Angie's mega deal. So I think, you know, I think we need to be a little bit careful not to start talking India down, given where we are with the AI cycle, because these conversations start to become really
Cynicism is an occupational hazard for journalists.
Yeah,
So, quick caveat. The other thing we learned that's common between the two of you is you're a large shareholder in Sun Life, so you're the boss.
Kevin's being very nice to me today.
Martin, we're talking about corporate America and how it's really been boom time, but much of this honeymoon is because it has spent the preceding decade exploiting historically low borrowing costs, which has led to, you know, companies like Tapestry, which is the company behind Coach, and Kate Spade, like brands. They've boosted shareholder returns with debt-fueled acquisitions. We've seen companies like Apple launch mega buybacks. But how long can this party last?
Were you having a dig at private equity there? Because you were talking about low borrowing costs.
Right.
Because I always remember, I hesitate to mention the Financial Times at the Economic Times conference, but there was an article I remember, it said that PE really didn't do much. A third of it was sort of price earnings multiples rising. A third of it was interest rates falling and refis, and only a third of it was due to fundamentally changing the pattern of companies. So I don't know whether you were digging at that, but we heard a couple of people on the panel talk about long term. And I think the reality, if you're operating a business or trying to operate a business like we do, is that the investment community has become far too short term. If I look at, obviously, one thing I would agree with President Trump on is that we should get rid of quarterly earnings or downplay them, because they put too much focus on the short term. So if you're running a listed company where there's a separation between ownership and control, it's a problem. PE companies, what is the average hold period? 5 years. Even VC, you know, we run a VC fund adjacent to S4 Monks called S4S Ventures. And what's one of the first questions we ask any investment is, where's the exit, or how's the exit? So I think people have become much too short term, and that might be a reality, by the way, but that's, you know, the turnover in CEOs, you know, here in India, we're seeing a lot of changes at the top level in part of that. Anyway, backing up from that, you asked about whether the honeymoon continues. I remember talking to the CEO of a major engineering company, won't name it, just recently at a conference, and about AI and AI run. And he said his order book was full to 2030. And this is a major engineering company, very, very dependent on AI infrastructure buildup. So my guess is, and it's a guess, is it will continue for a significant period of time. What's really interesting, we just did our Q2 earnings, and in talking to some investors, including major US institutional investors, there is deep concern about valuation and how long this boom will last. And actually the value in a couple of cases is being sought in Europe and Japan. In fact, the UK and Japan were both mentioned because we're based in the UK and operate in Japan. They were both mentioned as being low multiple, high value opportunities. But backing up for a minute, you know, the question that we're all trying to answer is, where's the smart money going? And I think it's going in two directions. The era of globalization is not finished in our view, but it is not as prevalent as Ted Levitt wrote about it at Harvard Business School in the 1980s. And it is much more fragmented. And everybody in this room running a business, either in India or beyond, I think has to think about two dimensions. The first dimension is life is going to be geographically much more fragmented, whether we like it or not. And there are going to be parts of the world that grow faster than other parts. And you have to figure that out. I just give you a view. I think the US remains strong. I think the US has to come to terms with China. I remember an ambassador to one country from the US said to us, a delegation, that the relationship between China and the US is structurally competitive. And I believe that to be the case. So whether Donald Trump meets President Xi 4 times this year, as he will do, or will have done by the end of the year, and the mood music at the, talking to people who were in the Great Hall of the People at the time, they said the mood music was very good. I don't think that is maintainable. I think that is a structural problem that will continue. And until America acknowledges that China is here to stay, and President Trump has done that publicly, FYI, but until they do that, we have, even if he does that, that's a structural competitor. The second issue is Russia and Ukraine. It's not just Ukraine, it's what's in Vladimir Putin's mind in terms of Russian expansionism and copying Peter the Great or Catherine the Great or whatever. And the third issue is Iran. These, in my view, are intractable problems and mean that geographical growth is going to be very different in various parts. Where do I see growth? US. Latin America is another part of the world, just like Asia, which is, in my view, underappreciated. In our industry, the creative talent and technology talent is absolutely superb, first class, youthful population, and undervalued. Middle East, because of energy source, despite Iran, will continue to be vitally important and a growth area, and Asia. China poses a problem to many who have big concentrations of business in China. If you're LVMH or Apple or Tesla and you have 25%, a third of your business in China, you probably don't want to go further given the Taiwan risk. I don't think they will invade. I think they will squeeze and continue to squeeze. One thing that we don't understand fully in the West is that China regards Taiwan as being part of China, and that is non-negotiable. So whatever we say, that's going to happen. That is part of President Xi's legacy, in my view, and will be enforced. So The alternatives in Asia become more and more important, like India. Fastest growth economy in the world last year, fastest growth economy this year, and fastest growth probably next year. Superb leadership, in my view. Some people may differ with that, but I think that is the case. In fact, we'd like to import some of that into Europe. Then other countries like India, Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Philippines. Now, I didn't mention Africa. Africa is too volatile. There are certain countries, I think, which you have to pay attention to. And then the other thing is Europe. And Western Europe, I have to say, in my view, is a dead duck. UK, France, Germany, Italy, Spain have all got fundamental problems that I think are unresolvable. I know we have Boris Johnson at this conference, but unresolvable unless we have strong leadership.
Yeah.
So that's it. So that's where I see the world. And as far as one other thing, one other dimension, we mentioned AI. I think we're going into a world where growth is under pressure, where inflation is much more stubborn. Central banks are trying to get it down to 2. They've failed so far. We're running at 3 or maybe even a little bit more than that. I think it's going to be stubborn and interest rates are going to be higher than we've been used to. We're already seeing that in the long ends of the bond market for various reasons. In that world, efficiency and effectiveness become critically important. So AI application plus what's coming down the track in quantum become super important. Yes. So 2 things, geographical fragmentation, choose your geographies, and number 2, AI transformation at scale. And sadly, we're not seeing that. We're seeing it in autos, we're seeing it in financial services, we're seeing it a bit in packaged goods, but only because there are existential threats to those verticals. And the sad thing about human beings is they don't change until they're pushed. Might be a little bit different with entrepreneurially driven companies, like some of the ones you see in India, but fundamentally, change doesn't come unless you get a squeeze. But those are the 2 things that I see, geography
and sorry to interject, but one person, and I want to bring him in this conversation, is the regulator amongst all of us. He's obviously trying to leverage on this, the point of a fragmented world that you talked about, and get capital, foreign capital into Gift City. So Dr. Shah, from a regulator's perspective, you've been trying to become an attractive alternative to Dubai or Singapore as a financial hub. But so far, are you satisfied with the number or the volume of FPIs shifting from, say, Mauritius, which has been a strong hub, or there's still a lot of room for improvement?
I think first from the perspective of, as you just mentioned about the economy, the way I think the India is slated to grow and the way the investments are going to flow, considering that the growth of the scale and size that the money can get in India is unparalleled. But the problem with some of the smaller center outside has always been there's not large hinterland demand. So what you are created now in India is you never had your own offshore financial center onshore.
Yeah.
And that's why you created the frictions in businesses in domestic. If I want to do international business, I have to necessarily go outside of Dubai, Mauritius, Singapore, and from there use India investments, which is now been removed. And what has been the experience of last 5 years by removing this larger frictions is that if you can provide a right regulatory regime, which is parallel to the global regulations that the centers provide, you give competitive tax regime for people to operate. And third, you give them the talent at the very competitive cost. I think this 3 combination is really what makes the financial center and the businesses to come in. And in GIFT in last 5 years, if we have to see the numbers, we moved from 129 licenses to 1300 licenses now in just last 5 years. We moved from 14 billion banking asset size to 140 billion dollar banking asset size in GIFT City as we speak. And we also moved from on an average daily turnover of $80 billion on stock exchanges operating in GIFT. At times, the volumes in GIFT in Nifty is much more larger than the whole of domestic India. So I think as I said, from a regulatory perspective, if you do the fundamentals right, people really want to make investments into India and use the right structures to do that. We also seen emergence of 400 funds with 250 plus fund managers. Now they brought in $40 billion, which were all being deployed from smaller centers outside into India. So to your question that how many FPIs or how many businesses have started moving in, out of these 400 funds, at least 50 to 70 funds would have been closed down in Mauritius or Singapore and moved into in. There are many who would have otherwise would have gone to those financial centers, have come back into GIFT now. And then there is a healthy pipeline of at least 500, 600 funds, which are now looking at GIFT City as an opportunity to invest not only in India, but from GIFT City invest outside of India. So we are seeing huge flow also from a global access perspective of investing outside, entering from GIFT City and going out. So in general, we see a lot of inbound and outbound capital now being matched through GIFT City.
Interesting. Kevin, I'm sorry, yeah.
In deal activity as well, right? You have a lot of international companies either looking to acquire things in India, have partnership deals in India, or monetize their India business. So you've seen every version of that drive deal activity here as well. And the
Anu,
ease
is
of
it more valuation arbitrage or is it more,
no, it's
the dynamics of the market fundamentally?
it's much more the dynamics in the market than value, because the valuation arbitrage was there much more last year than this year.
Yeah.
With the valuation decline that you've had in India, there's less of an arbitrage. But last year, that was a bit of what people were looking to do, is to create a currency
Yeah.
which you can then use for acquisitions. But even now, we were talking about that there is valuations here are still very attractive compared to valuations in the Canadian or US markets in some industries and sectors. You asked earlier about this debt-fueled growth. And I think that was much more a phenomena in 2021, 22, because the majority of the deal activity that is happening now is strategic, not sponsors. Martin said kind of the owning period for sponsors was 5 years. Now people wish it were 5 years. It's grown a lot longer because every year about 20, 25% of private equity would get monetized, whereas the last few years it's only been 10%. That would translate to a 10-year holding period, which is not what this business was set up for. So I think the ease of doing business and removing friction is one side of it, right? But the second important driver for investment is liquidity and exits. And that has become more complicated recently because the straight line of you buy a company, do something to it, and I IPO it or sell it has not worked frictionless. And that has been the bottleneck, as a result of which private equity is sitting on 30,000 companies which are looking
Yet
for
they're
an exit.
raising more and more money, bigger and bigger
Access to
funds.
capital, that's my point. Access to capital is not the issue.
Yeah.
It is how do I create the cycle of deployment and monetizations and give confidence to people like Sharon that we can do that.
But I think linked to that, the point about which Martin also picks up, which is the importance of policy consistency, becomes there's just an enormously increased premium over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, just to get a little bit of more balance into it. I mean, just in terms of the US boom, I mean, it's very difficult to predict, but the numbers are pretty staggering. If you look at the 4 biggest hyperscalers, which are basically Alphabet, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon.
Yeah.
They are going into Q2. They were going to spend 630 billion on infrastructure, AI infrastructure. Coming out of Q2, it's up to 830, and next year the prediction is about 1.1 trillion. Those 4 will spend, on current estimates by JPM and by Goldman and others, 5 trillion over 5 years. These are huge amounts of money, and they resonate with the railroad development. In our road trip around our Q2 results, one institutional investor waved a book at me, which is entitled 1873, which is about the building out of the railroads. And I think that's the nearest analogy. And if you look at that, if that's the appropriate analogy, there are a lot of people who went bust. in building out the infrastructure. It's a big bet. The other thing is the capital light models are going to capital heavy models. As you mentioned, they're going to be raising about $500 billion, 530 billion, I think is the figure that's out there next year alone in leverage to fund the $1 trillion they're spending in AA. So we're seeing a dramatic change. Now, whether that causes a rupture to the financial system at some point in time or not, I mean, at some point in time, even Mr. Diamond would say that was going to happen. Okay. The question is when. When that happens, which it will happen, that the waves from that will spill over into the other geographies. So this American, and just one other thing.
Yeah, sure.
American earnings growth is huge.
Yeah.
Q2 was 50%, including capital gains on SpaceX and PE. Strip that out, it was 30. Strip out the hyperscalers, you get down to 14% EPS growth, and it's 7 quarters of double-digit EPS growth. This is off the charts. People don't really understand, I think, the surge in corporate earnings, and it's fueling JPM's coffers in terms of M&A fees.
And also the other, Kevin, people might say that there's the other pocket of stress is a lot of this financing is being done from insurance companies, from private credit, or insurance money getting into private credit and private credit financing these, much like the LBO boom days. Is that something that bothers you?
I think the question to be asked is, and let me talk about how we run our insurance business. We run our insurance business matters deeply to us, and our clients in our insurance business matter deeply to us, and helping our clients achieve our purpose, helping clients achieve lifetime financial security and live healthier lives. We've ran insurance for 160 years. We do our asset liability management in a certain way, duration and cash flow matching, risk management. The question to ask is, do some of these asset management companies, do they care about the insurance company as a business and the purpose for their clients, or do they care about the insurance business because it's cash flow for their assets? Now, we of course like the relationship between our insurance business and its ability to create seed capital and investments for our asset management, but the two exist for a purpose beside each other. We run them with fundamental principles, and we create this flywheel between the two. So that's the question to ask the insurers, the asset managers that are using insurance. If they're using it just for assets and they're running duration differences or differences in how they manage those two, we all know how that ends in the end. That's what happened during the variable annuity crisis. When I was running investor relations for Sun Life during that time, we would go and visit investors in New York City, and they would say, why aren't you doing more of this? And we would say, because it doesn't make sense in terms of the matching of your liabilities and your assets and how you're managing that risk. And they told me and our CEO at the time that we were acting like a mutual company until they saw what happened after the global financial crisis. So I'm just telling you, the question to ask, and I'm not saying that they're operating it this way, the question to ask is, how are you running your insurance business? What's the purpose of your insurance business? And how are you managing the risk? And if that's done well, and you're I still believe they know how to select good credit, then these can be fundamentally strong. And we're seeing actually great credit experience around the world. So that's the question, and that's the part to look at.
But if you look at the hyperscalers, though, it's not all insurance money, right? The three people who've been the biggest investors of what Martin was referencing have been Apollo, BlackRock, and Blackstone. And I view them much more as
I wonder, Anu, but whether Apollo is an insurance company or an alternative asset manager anymore.
So they have $100 billion coming from, but all of them have become multi-strategy asset management firms. They are no longer private equity firms, right? Private credit, insurance, alternatives are a much bigger part of what drives all of these companies. And the amount of capital they have to put to work is enormous. And so you don't have other avenues where you can put this much money to work other than into the AI ecosystem.
I think that I've heard some asset managers say, they can get more capital than they can get good invested assets,
Yeah.
that should worry people.
I would say 2 words.
That should worry people.
Discipline and diversification.
Yeah.
Sharon, the last word to you. The definition of value is changing. Investors, like pension funds, are looking beyond financial returns more toward resilience, sustainability, governance, and long-term societal impact. How do you balance these priorities without compromising returns? Because at the end of the day, you serve the pensioners.
Yeah, we serve the pensioners who broadly need about 6% to be kind of fully funded. I mean, we're quite unusual, though we have a similar perspective to the one that kind of Kevin outlined, which is we have 2 mandates, which is unique amongst pension funds. So we have a mandate to serve the development of our home province of Quebec, as well as seeking internationally competitive returns that make sure that our pensioners get great pensions, can look after their grandkids, can retire with security and retire with dignity. And so for us, we don't see these 2 things as being in conflict with each other.
Yeah, but just I've got to say that the emphasis has totally changed in the last 2 years, 3 years. The answer that Sharon gave, with all due respect, I think would be far more widely not appropriate, enforced 2 years ago than it is now. For good or evil, and I think most people on the panel would say for evil, that's the case. But I think we have to be realistic about it. The emphasis on social responsibility, corporate responsibility, the environment, sustainability has diminished substantially.
Yes.
If you look at annual reports
Yeah.
now, this year, versus 2 or 3 years ago, it's chalk and cheese. And it's the whole atmosphere has changed. And for the obvious reason, it's all emanating from North America and the Trump administration. And it has, in my view, been a huge sea change. Whether it goes back again, we shall see, but I think it's changed.
And I don't disagree with Martin. The only thing I would say is that it hasn't compromised our returns. And that's a really important point. We're not a social enterprise. It hasn't compromised returns.
Sharon, I'm sorry, I have to end because we're completely out of time and I'm getting these call signs. But thank you very much, all of you, for making time and for your insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A big thank you to all the panelists and the moderator for the discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, please pay attention. Up next is an extremely important announcement. We'll now be pausing the program because as part of the security protocol for the arrival of the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, the hall will now undergo a security sweep.
We request you to carry all your belongings, bags, phones, everything when you leave this hall. We have a high tea in the Shah Jahan hall. You'll have to move there. A quick reminder, do not leave anything behind in this hall and please try and leave the room as quickly as you can.
And we will resume the proceedings in this hall sharp at 6 p.m. So we request you to kindly make your way back at that time.
Thank you.